Chapter 344. Navy. Looking at the Marines pouring in, the members of the Justice Pirates all stood up from their seats. The Rear Admiral shouted, "I am the Empire's Rear Admiral, Chop Joe. You pirates are simply lawless. You have become the Empire's spies, but you still attack the Empire's trading ships. Today, I must let you get the punishment you deserve. Please calm down, Rear Admiral Chop Joe. This is not a place to fight." The receptionist's face changed. He quickly rushed out of the door and blocked the door. The receptionist was very nervous. If the two sides really fought, no matter who won or lost, as one of the main people in charge here, he would definitely bear a huge responsibility. "Rear Admiral of the Navy, you misunderstood. I am the captain of the Justice Pirates. We have never attacked the Empire's trading ships. In fact, it is the opposite. We have eradicated the real culprit, the Swift Blade Pirates." The Draconid youth explained. This is only your side of the story. I'm not that easy to fool." Chop Joe sneered. The Navy quickly approached. "Damn it, do you want to fight?" "Captain, although the other side has a gold, there's only one silver extraordinary." The backbone of the Justice Pirates were very calm. In the Battle of the CEI, they had personally participated and witnessed the battle between the God's Incarnation and the legendary powerhouse. So, now facing a gold-level enemy, they did not panic and were still in high spirits. The Draconid youth shook his head slightly. "Calm down." Song Su cast his gaze on the receptionist. "Receptionist of the Empire, this is a secret dock. Is this the sincerity of the Empire? We have surrendered to the Empire, but were arrested by the Navy in the Empire's port. If this news spreads, which pirate will trust and surrender to the Empire in the future?" The receptionist's face was as serious as iron. Although he was only a black iron, he was not afraid at all. He angrily questioned Chop Joe. "Rear Admiral Chop Joe, do you know the consequences of this? Your impulsive action is likely to destroy the overall situation of the Empire. Can you bear such a responsibility? Your concerns are easy to deal with. I've already dealt with these pirates, so naturally, no news will spread. I will take care of the Empire's overall situation, and the Navy's justice will also be carried out by me." As he spoke, Xiao Qiao held his long sword in his hand, his golden dough qi surging around his body. "Major General Qiao, aren't you being a little too confident?" The Draconid youth snorted coldly and immediately activated his silver-colored combat aura while ordering his companions, "Prepare to break through." In the next moment, Cho and Di Lu activated their silver battle chi. Song Su and ZD floated into the air. Xiao Qiao's pupils couldn't help but shrink slightly. 3 silver rankers. The Dragonoid captain, in particular, looked like the type that could fight above his level. What made Slash Joe even more worried was that although the number of pirates was small, the ratio of spellcasters was very high. Flute was a silver-ranked bard, while Song Su and ZD were only iron-ranked, but they were all magicians. Spellcasters had many more tricks up their sleeves than fighters. Even as a gold ranker, Xiao Qiao couldn't guarantee a quick victory in the next battle. It was too easy for a spellcaster to send message. A trace of regret grew in Major General Qiao's heart. He had underestimated the strength of the Justice Pirates. The various clues left behind from the battlefield revealed the strength of the Swift Sword Pirates. When a Murloc youth and the others really attacked, the Justice Pirates had a very obvious advantage. The Swift Sword Pirates were defeated quickly, and most of them were captured. Moreover, the ship that was used as the battlefield was also driven away, leaving very few traces behind. Major General Xiao Qiao, this is the Empire's secret port, not the Navy's port. Another receptionist rushed into the dock. He begged Major General Qiao. Originally, the Empire's Navy couldn't rest here. "Major General Xiao Qiao, I only agreed to receive your fleet because of your family. Your uncle and I used to be classmates. You can't make it difficult for me." Xiao Qiao looked at the newcomer and frowned. But the Navy was still forcing the Draconid youth and the others. The Draconid youth saw Major General Xiao Qiao's hesitation and spoke again. "Xiao Qiao, I was originally a knight of the Empire. I planned to go to the wilderness to make a name for myself. But I encountered a shipwreck and met a spy of the Empire, so I formed the Justice Pirates. At the beginning of my formation, I announced that the goal of the Justice Pirates was not any merchant ship, but other pirates. Until now, my regiment has acted with this philosophy and has never invaded or robbed any merchant ship. Your justice can't punish me. Oh, Chow Chow's expression changed, and his eyes focused on the Draconid youth who held his head high. I can testify. The receptionist on the Draconid youth side raised his hand and responded loudly. The Empire's intelligence has indeed recorded the Justice Pirates situation, and it is indeed as the Dragon Captain said. The Justice Pirates are different. Another receptionist nodded. I also know about the Justice Pirates. This group has the Greed God Bone and recently exchanged a treasure map with the Empire and went to the Tianju Sea to search for treasures. There has never been any intelligence that this pirate group has robbed merchant ships. Is that so? Chow Chow seemed to relax, and the hesitation on his face deepened, and his sword drooped to the ground. The Draconid youth's gaze was faint. If you don't believe me, you can use the lie detector scroll on the spot. I don't want to fight the Empire's navy, and I'm more willing to prove my innocence. Okay, then let's do that. Chow Chow stared at the Draconid youth, and with a wave of his hand, the navy immediately stopped in place. He had a high degree of control over his subordinates, and they were completely obedient. Immediately, the receptionist took out the lie detector scroll. Facing the lie detector scroll, the Draconid youth repeated his previous words. The scroll did not react at all, confirming the truth of the Draconid youth. The Draconid youth looked at the scroll and described the process of his side's destruction of the Swift Blade Pirates. The scroll's power continued, and no lies were found. The Justice Pirates, interesting. Major General Chow Chow's expression eased, but his gaze was still doubtful. As far as I know, the lie detector scroll is not omnipotent, and there are many ways to act freely under this scroll. Oof. Chow Chow, you better understand. The Draconid youth was unhappy. I prove my innocence, not because I'm afraid of you, and not because I'm not sure if I can break through successfully. I'm doing this because I don't want to waste time between justice. Of course, I don't want my subordinates to be damaged for no reason. I've shown my sincerity, and you have to keep your doubts to yourself. Chow Chow Sama. The two receptionists said in unison and looked at Chow Chow. Chow Chow was silent for a while, and then coldly snorted, "Retreat." He turned back to the way he came, and before leaving, he took a deep look at the Draconid youth. Justice Pirates, I'll keep an eye on you. Once I find out that I've been deceived, The members of the Justice Pirates glared at the Navy's departure. The two receptionists saw that the war had been resolved and breathed a sigh of relief, but their faces were still ugly. Next time, I will never let the Navy enter the harbor to rest. The second receptionist came over with a look of regret. The first receptionist patted him on the shoulder. "It's not your fault. Now all the spies are directly under the command of Fleet Admiral Sultan, and Chow Chow's fleet is not in a good state. They must rest quickly, and this is the only military harbor. We're all in a difficult position." After consoling the young man, the receptionist turned to the young man and the others with an apologetic look. "I'm really sorry to have affected all of you. In order to express our apologies, we can renegotiate the terms of the exchange of resources. I will give you the most favorable discount." The second receptionist continued. "I will give all the Imperial contribution points under my personal name to you as compensation. Please be sure to accept it." A sudden crisis was temporarily resolved, and it even brought about some unexpected gains. Immediately, the Justice Pirates discussed the exchange content in exchange for more materials. Chapter 345. Deep-Sea Monster Fish Core Cabin. The Draconid youth solemnly handed a scroll in his hand to ZD. This scroll was the ship spirit's alchemy restoration scroll. ZD untied the delicate string and slowly unrolled the scroll. The scroll skin was not the usual sheepskin of scroll, but the more delicate deerskin. The scroll shaft was made of some kind of alloy. The shaft was silver white, but the surface had fine straight black engravings. The engravings intersected with each other, forming square and rectangular patterns. The creator of the scroll, Tucker, had a clever mind. The alloy shaft contained a secret. The shaft and the scroll were one, neither could be missing. Only when they were put together would it be a complete ship's spirit's restoration scroll. This made it several times harder for someone to copy it. The entire scroll gave off a strong golden aura. That's right, this was a gold-grade magic tool, and it was a one-time use item. There were only the Draconid Youth, ZD, and Song-Su in the core cabin. After ZD unrolled the scroll, she began to focus on it. After the three of them discussed, the scroll was given to ZD to use. There were two reasons. One was that ZD had swallowed the soul of the ship spirit. Her soul had reached silver grade, and her spiritual power had increased by leaps and bounds. The second reason was that ZD had authority over the tower spirit. After focusing on it, ZD quickly grasped the scroll. Then, she began to inject her magic power into it. At this step, the difficulty was much higher than the first step, because it was very difficult for a Black Iron mage to use their own magic power to activate a gold-grade scroll, especially this scroll that required even more magic power. ZD quickly used more than half of her magic power, but the scroll in her hand did not even emit a trace of light. There was no reaction at all. The girl frowned. This is a bit troublesome. This scroll requires a lot of magic power. Don't worry, we have plenty of time. The Draconid Youth comforted her. ZD nodded and took the initiative to slow down the magic power output. She opened her mouth slightly. The Draconid Youth took out a potion, removed the cork, and poured it into ZD's mouth. ZD swallowed it, and the potion quickly took effect, quickly replenishing her magic power. Just like that, the girl used mana potions while instilling magic into the scroll. The scroll in her hand began to emit a faint glow. It's a pity that deep-sea monstrous fish doesn't have an open record desk. Otherwise, we could directly use the power of deep-sea monstrous fish. There's no need to go through so much trouble, Song-Su said regretfully. The open scroll desk was a type of magical device that was specifically used to release magic scrolls. Many castles, wizard towers, magic ships, and airships had such devices. After the open file desk was activated, it would directly consume the mana reserves in the mana pool. There was no need to instill mana manually. Although deep-sea monster fish was a gold-grade magical ship, it did not have a docking station. As a legendary mage, the warlord had no use for such things. As time passed, the ship spirit's restoration scroll emitted an increasingly powerful golden glow. On the other hand, ZD's face was pale and her body was swaying. In a short time, she had drunk a dozen tubes of mana potions, and her body was showing signs of collapsing. "Let us help you," the Draconid Youth said when he saw this. ZD nodded, and so the Draconid Youth and Song-Su both placed their hands on the shaft or scroll and instilled their own mana into it. The Draconid Youth had just started his magic cultivation. Although he had mana, it was quickly depleted. He then began to drink the mana potion. A moment later, Song-Su also drank the potion. There were 3 sources of mana in the scroll, but because ZD had the most mana and occupied most of it, the situation remained stable. The Draconid Youth and Song-Su cooperated fully with ZD. Finally, after half an hour of unfolding the scroll, the combined mana of the 3 of them finally reached the standard for using the scroll. The scroll quickly burned into ashes, turning into a golden ball of light. The ball of light was half the height of a person, and the alloy shaft of the scroll was wrapped inside. The alloy shaft quickly disintegrated in the golden light, turning into countless alchemy runes, complicated and confusing. ZD used her mind to control the golden ball of light and let it slowly float onto the crystal ball. The crystal ball was the size of a millstone, translucent, as if there was a cloud of mist inside. It was the carrier of the tower genie. The golden ball of light quickly merged into the crystal ball, and began to repair the tower genie. The crystal ball was enveloped in golden light. After about 10 minutes, the golden light became weaker and weaker until it completely disappeared. There was no change in the crystal ball, and it was still translucent like before. But soon, the tower genie's voice suddenly sounded. Discovered authority holder. Missy D. Hillo. The three of them looked at each other and were somewhat happy. The tower genie's voice was different from before, and it was not as stiff and weak as when it was first moved onto the ship. ZD spoke. Tower genie begins self-examination. The tower genie before could not self-examine, but now that the scroll was used, the tower genie immediately replied. Beginning self-examination estimate. Estimated self-examination time, 85 seconds. Confirm self-examination. Please self-examine. ZD confirmed. Self-examination countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Self-examination begins. The three of them waited patiently for more than a minute. The tower genie replied. Discovered missing parts. Discovered missing memory. Detected deep-sea monster fish. Self-examination ended. Overall evaluation. Current state, 32%. Suggested repair as soon as possible. Suggested parts are as follows. The tower genie listed the names of many alchemy equipment, and if ZD had not interrupted it, it would have continued. Stop, tower genie. ZD thought for a moment and asked, I want to know, how much did the alchemy scroll help you recover? The tower genie said, checking the records, 17% before the scroll was used, 32% after the scroll was used. Using this type of scroll again, estimated state, 40%. From 17% to 32%, the alchemy scroll directly repaired the tower genie by 18%. However, if it was used again, it would only increase by 8%, estimated to reach 40%. ZD asked again, what about the third use of this type of scroll? How much can you repair? The tower genie said 2%. The repair effect of the alchemy scroll dropped sharply. For an ordinary ship spirit, this scroll should be able to repair a lot. But the tower genie came from the war dealers, so it was naturally the best of the tower genies. Moreover, this was a tower genie, not a ship spirit. There was still a difference between the two. Even if it's 8%, if we use this type of scroll again, we can repair almost half of the tower genie, ZD said. Although the alchemy scroll was expensive, in the girl's opinion, it was worth it to use it again. The draconian youth said, let's see how much we gain after the tower genie repairs this time. Next, ZD contacted the tower genie mentally and investigated the tower genie's memory bank, but awkwardly found that she could not see the contents of some of the memory bank. Tower genie, I want to check the alchemy array diagrams of the central tower, ZD immediately said. The tower genie replied, insufficient authority, please raise your authority. The three of them were dumbfounded for a moment, because they could check the alchemy array diagrams before the tower genie repaired it. That was how the jade liquid array in the core cabin came about. After the tower genie repaired it, this part of the content was locked away by the tower genie. ZD asked again, Tower genie, raise our authority. The tower genie refused. You need the authorization of the first authority holder, the warlord, to raise your authority. The three of them. After paying such a price, this was what they got in return? No. In the currently repaired memory bank, I can find a lot of information, including all kinds of meditation techniques, spells, chi arts, fighting skills, alchemy techniques, etc. The value of these has far exceeded the price we paid for the scroll. ZD continued to check, and suddenly she exclaimed in a low voice, I found some travel records of the warlord. It actually recorded that he had piloted the deep-sea monster fish into the Heaven Pillar Sea area many times. Chapter 346. Looking at the records of the war traffickers entering and exiting the Sky Pillar Sea, ZD sighed. So, the war traffickers have already entered the Sky Pillar Sea, Perhaps he stole the fairy tale of the mermaid from the Blue Charm cult. But the draconid youth shook his head. No, I don't think the war traffickers are enemies with the Blue Charm cult. They should be working together. Do you still remember the battle in the sky pillar? The Draconid youth turned and looked at Song Su. What were the Murlocs shouting when deep-sea monster first appeared? Song Su nodded slightly. If I remember correctly, they called deep-sea monster a holy beast. Yes. The Draconid youth nodded. I've asked around in CI City and received information about the holy beast. Lord Fiveheads is the son of the holy beast that resides in CI City, but there are rumors of another holy beast among the locals. This holy beast occasionally appears in the shape of a giant fish. It should be the deep-sea monster fish. Other than that, there was another solid piece of evidence, but the Draconid youth chose to keep it a secret. That was the third blood core. Back then, when a youth returned to deep-sea monster with blue charm goddess in his arms, he unexpectedly found the third blood core in the goddess chest. In the past few days, the youth had thought it through. The war traffickers should have been working with the Blue Charm cult a long time ago. It's very likely that the Blue Charm cult gave the fairy tale to the war traffickers, and the war traffickers used the third blood core in exchange. Every once in a while, the war traffickers would drive deep-sea monster to the sky pillar and replenish their divine power from the priests of the Blue Charm cult. The war traffickers also helped the Blue Charm cult build an alchemy array with the blood core as the core, using the blood core to deceive the divine realm. It looks like a miracle's holy water that has the miraculous effect of improving the Murloc's bloodline. The Blue Charm god's divine power is in deceit and disguise. It doesn't have any divine power related to bloodline or life. Thinking of this, the Draconid youth said to the two mages in front of him, if the war traffickers were enemies with the Blue Charm god, the sounds of the battle wouldn't have escaped CI City's ears. Deep-sea monster definitely wouldn't be treated as a holy beast. Since it's a saint beast, it must have been approved by the Blue Charm sect. Song Su muttered, this guess is very likely to be the truth. Now that I think about it, both the war traffickers and the Blue Charm god are enemies of the Empire. War traffickers were experts on the 10 most wanted list. Blue Charm God had once engaged in a battle with the Grand Duke of the Empire. Until now, the Shengming Emperor was still searching for her. Goddess Blue Charm couldn't even return to her god kingdom. ZD's eyes glowed. Since the war dealer and Blue Charm Goddess are working together, let's take out the fairy tale of the mermaid and put it in front of the goddess. Maybe she will charge the artifact directly. Song Su quickly shook his head. That's too risky. Since the ship ghoul has noticed that the two gods are getting restless, and if they're in a stalemate, we lack the ability to disguise ourselves. If we take out the divine artifact, it might trigger the awakening of the goddess, or break the stalemate between the two gods. Yes, the Draconid youth agreed. Let's stick to our original plan and use the blasphemy priest to steal the divine power. Song Su's expression turned serious. I will do my best, Captain. At this time, ZD said, interesting. In the restored memory, there are many alchemy puppet blueprints. I think we can make a few maintenance puppets. This is a spherical puppet with a propeller on its head. The ball can be loaded and unloaded with maintenance components. As long as we have 3 of these puppets and special maintenance tools, we won't have to do anything to the arrays inside and outside the deep-sea monster fish. This good news immediately attracted the attention of the youth and the necromancer. After a discussion, the 3 of them all agreed that the best strategy was to create maintenance puppets and use them to repair the deep-sea monster fish. This was the most efficient way and could save the most time. It could also bring long-term benefits in the future. The alchemy puppets that the deep-sea monster fish had originally been equipped with were general-purpose puppeteers. They knew a little bit of everything, but were not proficient in any of them. Therefore, they could only repair the deep-sea monster fish to the basic standard. The maintenance puppets were different. They were designed by the warlords to deal with maintenance problems. They could be said to be specialized in the field. After maintenance, the results were naturally outstanding. In the field of alchemy, the warlords were not good at making puppets. But he was a master alchemist after all. Even if he was not good at it to the Justice Pirates, and even the outside world, he was the best of the best. He was a priceless existence. Zhongge was unconscious. The highest level of the Justice Pirates was the Draconid youth, ZD, and Song Su. After the discussion, Song Su and ZD left the core cabin, but the Draconid youth stayed. He stroked the crystal ball carrier of the Tower Genie and read the information inside through spirit infusion. He mainly checked the battle energy arts and battle techniques. In the Battle of the Sky Pillar CEI, the Justice Pirates had both losses and gains. The losses were mainly in personnel and ships. The members of the Justice Pirates suffered heavy casualties and some went missing. For example, Kaze Kaze was still missing. Apart from that, the remaining pearl foam had been used up. The gains were mainly Goddess Blue Charm, God's Eye of Truth, and the Third Blood Core. Obviously, in terms of value, the Justice Pirates' gains were too great. The losses were insignificant compared to the gains. At the same time, the situation of the Draconid youth and others became worse and more dangerous. If discovered, these gains would be the biggest reason for the destruction of the Draconid youth and others. The difficulties of Rear Admiral Joe and others stimulated the youth's heart even more and filled him with a sense of crisis. In the 3 days after the evacuation from the Sky Pillar CEI, he constantly examined himself. He felt that if he wanted to increase his strength as soon as possible, he had to rely on the blood core. The third blood core that he had accidentally obtained from Goddess Blue Charm had been swallowed by the youth's blood core. The third blood core was filled with fishman bloodlines. There were many types, and the 3 strongest bloodlines were present. They were the Shark Fishman bloodline, the Algae Fishman bloodline, and the Boomerang Fishman bloodline. They were all God level. These 3 God level bloodlines represented Do Chi, magic, and divinity respectively. The Shark Fishman bloodline was the first bloodline that the youth had obtained. It had mutated after bathing in the holy spring, but it was not a complete bloodline. After absorbing the third blood core, the youth's 3 God-level bloodlines were all at 100%. Using the Shark Fishman bloodline to cultivate Do Chi was much more efficient than using the Flame Dragon King bloodline. But in terms of magic and divinity, it was only slightly better than the Flame Dragon King bloodline. Algae Fishman and Boomerang bloodline were the same. The Fishman was a lower race, while the Dragon race was a higher race. Therefore, the quantity and quality of the Fishman God-level bloodline was far less than the Dragon race God-level bloodline. The Flame Dragon King's bloodline is of the legendary grade, but I only swallowed 1 Flame Dragon King, so the bloodline is not complete. But the Shark Fishman bloodline is 100%. The youth had used the Shark Fishman bloodline in actual combat, and his overall performance was similar to the Draconid form. There were 2 main reasons. The first was that the enemy was too strong, and it was difficult to show the difference between the 2 forms. The second reason was that the Shark Fishman form lacked a matching Do Chi art and Do Chi technique. If the Shark Fishman form is matched with a suitable Do Chi art and Do Chi technique, then my battle strength will definitely surpass my current Draconid form. Soon, a look of joy flashed across the youth's face. There is indeed a suitable Do Chi art for me. The war dealer had collected a lot of Do Chi arts. He was legendary and had wealth comparable to a country. He had all sorts of channels to easily obtain resources that normal people could not. Although there were obvious gaps in his memory, the Draconid youth still found a suitable Do Chi art for himself. This Do Chi art was called the Light Life art. It was a Do Chi art for the Fishman race, not for humans. The Fishman's body structure was similar to humans, but compared to humans, there are many differences. The Light Life art was most suitable for the Shark Fishman form. If it was a human Do Chi art, the youth would have to spend a lot of effort and time to improve it. In terms of grade, the Light Life art was a Saint-level Do Chi art. Its biggest advantage was its speed. The Do Chi users who cultivated this Do Chi art would have their movement and attack speed become extremely fast. Of course, its defense, strength, recovery from injuries, energy recovery, and other aspects far surpassed the explosive Do Chi art. The latter was only a silver-level Do Chi art after all. What was worth the youth's attention was that the Light Life art also had a major drawback. This drawback was that after a fishman cultivated this Do Chi art, the fish scales on the surface of his body would gradually become thinner and lighter over time. In the end, they would become as thin as paper, and his defense would plummet. If not for this drawback, this Do-Chi art might be able to reach the legendary level. The Do-Chi art also had a way to deal with this major drawback. That was to regularly scrape the scales and let the new scales grow back. I'm not a real shark fisherman, but a mutated blood core. Maybe I can just ignore this drawback? Next, the youth tried his best to memorize the contents of the Do-Chi art. After memorizing it, the youth left the core cabin and immediately entered the sea to cultivate. They had just arrived at Sharp Knife Town and completed the initial exchange of resources. It was estimated that they would need 3 days to complete the exchange. At least it is relatively safe for now. During the conversion of the Do-Chi in his body, the youth's combat strength would drop a lot, and he would be in a weakened state. However, his intuition told him that if he gave up this time, he would not have such a good opportunity in the future. In the depths of the dark sea, there was not a trace of light. However, the youth's vision was clear, and he obtained a sense of tranquility and comfort from the cold and dark sea water. Dive deeper and deeper. Deep-sea monster fish had already scouted the surroundings and discovered that there was an underwater whirlpool here. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The water in the whirlpool was like a knife, spinning rapidly, and the surrounding life forms avoided it. However, this was the most suitable place for the light life art to cultivate. After taking a deep breath of seawater, the fish gills immediately moved, extracting the oxygen in it and supplying it to the youth. The next moment, the youth threw himself into the whirlpool without hesitation. Chapter 347. As soon as he entered the whirlpool, the young merman's body became unstable. The strong current washed over him, making him feel as if he was at the bottom of a waterfall. The huge impact almost pushed the young merman out. When he was near the edge of the whirlpool, the young merman finally adjusted himself. He moved his 4 limbs and tail and rushed into the whirlpool with all his strength. Only then did he not get thrown out of the whirlpool. Sha Qing's bloodline was god level, so the young merman quickly adapted to the current. He also found a pattern. Although the direction of the current in the whirlpool changed a lot, it still revolved around the center of the whirlpool. After a while, the young merman was swimming in the whirlpool. His smooth body, strong limbs, and flexible tail made him feel like a fish in water. In this state, the young merman began to cultivate the light life battle chi. This was his first time cultivating this brand new battle chi, but he got the hang of it very quickly. A few seconds later, he felt a brand new fighting aura emanating from every part of his body. Although it was still silver-colored battle chi, the young merman instantly felt the huge difference between the new battle chi and the old battle chi. So powerful. In the next moment, the young merman's eyes lost focus, and his heart was filled with shock. Countless new Do-Chi burst out from every part of his body. At this moment, he had an illusion. He felt that his whole body was submerged by the new battle chi, and his whole body was in a silver-white sea of light. Endless new battle chi was seeping into his body from outside. This is god-level bloodline. The young merman was speechless. Bloodline was the cornerstone of extraordinaire's cultivation, and the most important factor in cultivation. When normal people cultivated battle chi, like Baya, they cultivated with all their strength, and it was extremely difficult, but the battle chi they produced was only strands of battle chi. For those with bronze-level bloodline, like Suma, the battle chi they produced during cultivation was like mist. For the black iron level on Zao, the battle chi they produced was like water droplets. For the silver level, the battle chi they produced was like a stream. For the gold level bloodline, the battle chi they produced was like a waterfall. When one reached the Saint Domain, when one cultivated battle energy, it was as if one was connected to a great river, surging endlessly. For the legendary level, the battle chi they produced was like a vast ocean, surging violently. With the god bloodline, one would feel as if they were immersed in the light of the heavens. Both inside and outside, they would shine endlessly. The speed at which a brand new Do-Chi was formed was so fast that it was shocking. The Murloc youth's old battle Chi couldn't resist at all and was quickly converted. The explosive Do-Chi technique that the youth cultivated was far inferior to the light life technique. 10 portions of old fighting energy could only be converted into 2 portions of new fighting energy. In half an hour, the youth's old Do-Chi had completely disappeared, and his body was completely new Do-Chi. The young man was still cultivating. His body was like a bottomless pit, constantly absorbing and storing new Chi. Although my Draconid bloodline was at the legendary level, it wasn't complete. Now, he has 100% divine bloodline and is a complete shark man. Therefore, his battle Chi capacity has increased by countless times. Speaking of which, I'm still a little burdened by the light life incantation. This battle Chi art is only at the saint level. Given my current divine bloodline and physique, I am most suited for a deity level battle Chi art. If I had such a battle Chi art, my cultivation efficiency would be much higher, and I would be able to bathe in the light of the heavens, limitless. The Murloc youth was immersed in his cultivation and almost forgot about the time. Traces of piercing pain came from all over his body, waking him up with a start. He immediately understood. My body can still hold light life incantation, but after this cultivation, my body is almost at its limit. He hurriedly left the underwater whirlpool and swam alone away from Knife Mountain Island. Finally, he swam to a group of reefs and rested for a short while. Touching his fish scales, he found that they had become much thinner. With a light touch, they broke. Although the skin under the scales was thick and tough, there were still traces of blood seeping out. This is the disadvantage of the new battle Chi art. Can I use the blood core to make up for it? The youth began to try. The attempt failed. After the red light flashed, the fish scales did not change. I understand now. The youth suddenly understood. In order to verify his guess, he stretched out his left arm and turned his left arm back into a human arm. Seeing that there was no mutation, his bare human arm immediately cracked open. He was covered in cuts and bruises, and blood flowed out nonstop. At the same time, he felt that his arm was very swollen. Light life incantation almost burst his arm. The Murloc youth quickly changed his arm back. Human blood covered the thin scales of the fish and dripped down continuously. The fish scales were thin and brittle, which should be the youth's injury. Therefore, it cannot be changed by the blood core. My human body was modified by the warlords and mixed with the Golden Needle Queen Bee's legendary bloodline, but it is not complete. It is even worse than the Dragon Man form. The Murloc god's body can hold more light life incantation, but the human body can't. If the Murloc god's body's light life incantation reaches its limit, I can't rashly transform into other life forms. If I turn back into a human, I'm afraid that the next second, the light life incantation in my body will explode. In fact, even the seaweed Murloc form and the Bolong Murloc form must be avoided as much as possible. The Murloc god's bloodline was top-notch in terms of light life incantation, but in the field of magic and divine arts, it was far inferior to the seaweed Murloc and the Bolong Murloc god's bloodline. It was the same the other way around. It was also relatively difficult for these two life forms with divine bloodline to bear the maximum amount of light life incantation stored in the Murloc form. Although the blood core was useless, the Murloc youth had other methods. He took out healing potions, recovery scrolls, and so on, and used them on himself one by one. Fish scales becoming brittle and thin was essentially an injury. Since it was an injury, it could naturally be healed. However, after using several healing methods, the Murloc youth found that the effects were not high. He analyzed that there were 2 reasons. The first reason was that healing Sha-Qing's god's body was much more difficult than healing the human body and Dragon Man form, although all 3 of them were silver life incantation. The second reason was that the various healing methods could only cover up the damage to the scales and could not accurately target it. For example, healing potions had the greatest effect of stopping the bleeding and healing the wounds on the flesh. In fact, The Murloc youth had never heard of a potion that specialized in healing fish scales. After thinking for a long time, the youth checked his body again and found that the fish scales had become thicker. This is the self-healing ability of Sha-Qing's god's body. The awkward thing was that the self-healing effect was better than the sum of the healing he had done previously. At the same time, the youth found that his light life incantation had decreased a lot. The light life incantation has permeated my entire body and nourished every part of my body. Plus, the body needs to heal itself, so the light life incantation will naturally consume some light life incantation. The youth was happy. From this point, it could be seen that the light life incantation was very compatible with Sha-Qing's god's body. If it was the explosive light life incantation from before, it would have been very difficult for Sha-Qing's god's body to absorb and nourish the Murloc youth's body. After resting for a while, the Murloc youth dived into the sea again to cultivate his light life incantation. At the same time, ZD had also arrived at Knife Mountain City. Due to the terrain, Knife Mountain Island mainly had one city and one town. They were Blunt Knife City and Sharp Knife Town. Because of the special location of Knife Mountain Island, the trade volume was not small. The Wisteria Chamber of Commerce had also set up a contact point here. The Wisteria Chamber of Commerce was divided and swallowed by the major forces. The overseas contact points were too small for the major forces, so they were still in the hands of the Wisteria Chamber of Commerce. During the day, the Justice Pirates entered the port and exchanged supplies with the receptionist. Not long after nightfall, ZD said goodbye to Tsang Su and the youth, quietly left the deep-sea monster fish, and rushed to Knife Mountain City. She arrived at her destination in half an hour. She was not alone. Sandao, Dilu, and Cho were with her. Coming to a corner of the city wall, ZD used magic to contact her subordinates. Soon, the city gate opened a gap. The subordinates nodded and bowed to the city guards and immediately ran out to greet ZD. ZD threw a magic token to the subordinates, who immediately used his magic tool to confirm. After confirming that there was no mistake, he smiled and said, "Elder, please come in." ZD was wearing a mask. Her appearance under the mask had changed greatly. Before leaving, she had taken a transformation potion. The others did the same. Although she was using her own power, ZD did not reveal her identity. She acted as an elder of the Chamber of Commerce. Under the guidance of the subordinates, they successfully passed through the city gate and officially entered Blunt Knife City. "Sir, this way, please." The subordinates prepared the carriage in the city. The four of them got into two carriages. The subordinates accompanied ZD. "Sir, your timing is too coincidental. Today is the black market auction." ZD nodded. First, she asked about the black market. Then, she inquired about the business of the Wisteria Chamber of Commerce. The subordinates were soon sweating from the questions. They felt that the elder of the Chamber of Commerce was shrewd and difficult to deal with. In a short time, ZD had caught many flaws in the subordinates' answers. Obviously, this person in charge of Blunt Knife City had embezzled many of the Chamber of Commerce's interests when the Wisteria Chamber of Commerce was in upheaval. But ZD pretended not to know. According to the Chamber of Commerce's records, when the Wisteria Chamber of Commerce selected the person in charge of this place, they had thought about it carefully. The subordinate in front of her had a close bloodline relationship with a large family in Blunt Knife City. It was because of this that the subordinate could easily bribe the city guards to open the way for ZD and the others at night. Now that they were in dire need of manpower and were in a precarious situation, ZD did not intend to hold her subordinate accountable. While ZD and the others were heading to the black market, an orc arrived at the city gate. "Who is it?" "Stop!" the city guards warned. The orc snorted. He lifted his hood and revealed his head. He took out a token and held it up. "Open your eyes and take a good look. Ah, it's the Imperial Navy." The city guards exclaimed. At the same time, they felt disgust and disdain. "A mere orc, open the city gate and let me in." The captain of the Fur Seals who killed Major General Chiao ordered. "Yes, sir." Then the city gate opened again. Chapter 348. Bluntblade City. There was almost no one on the streets at night. Only 2 carriages were parked in front of the Wisteria Chamber of Commerce's shop. ZD's group didn't go to the auction right away. Instead, they went to the shop first. The sorceress was holding a stone slab with a large paragraph of text carved on it. The words were densely packed and messy. It was obvious that a special codebook was needed to decode the words in order to obtain the real information hidden within. ZD checked it 3 times to make sure it was correct, then carefully put the stone slab into the groove. It was a magic device in the shape of a pillar, specifically used for communication. The pillar was only half the height of a person, with a round top and a groove in the middle. The rectangular stone slab was put into the groove, and it fit perfectly with the groove. After this step, there's no turning back, ZD thought. Her hesitation only lasted for a moment. The pearl foam was used up. The situation was critical. She had to ask the 100 Needles clan leader for help and get rid of her crime as soon as possible. ZD used her mind to control the pillar and began to pour her mana into it. The magic device was activated, emitting a yellow light. The light gathered on the stone slab, and the text on the stone slab started to move, turning into a blue light that was transferred from the stone slab to the pillar. The yellow light on the pillar then turned into blue light. The blue light rushed down and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Message transmission successful. ZD exhaled a mouthful of turbid air and pushed open the door. Didi Lu was guarding the door dutifully. Then, Sandow and the manager of the shop carried a small box and met up with ZD. The small box was full of gold coins. These were the shop's funds. With the funds, ZD's group returned to the carriage. The carriage once again ran on the empty dark street. Cho, who was hiding on the roof, silently landed in the carriage. The manager led ZD, Didi Lu, and Sandow into the black market's auction house. Not only was the road unimpeded, but there were also private rooms. Even though the Wisteria Chamber of Commerce was in ruins, it still had a reputation. The manager was corrupt, but he had a strong connection, so he was very popular here. The auction had already started for a while, but there was a secret door behind the box, so no one knew that ZD and the others had joined in the middle. After ZD sat down, a magic bottle was being auctioned. This bottle seemed to be made of brass. The bottom of the bottle was facing up, and the mouth of the bottle was facing down. Drops of water constantly dripped from the mouth of the bottle. This is a freshwater infusion bottle, silver grade. When it was still, it could absorb and transform the water elements in the air to condense fresh water. If we imbue it with magic or fill it with water elemental crystals, we can make it produce a lot of fresh water. If he had enough mana, a small bottle could satisfy the daily water needs of 200 people. The starting price is 100 gold coins, and each bid must be no lower than 10 gold coins. Let the auction begin. As soon as the auctioneer finished speaking, someone in the hall called out 110 gold, 120 gold, 130 gold, 150 gold. Someone raised the price to 150 gold coins, which was met with silence. The auctioneer's gavel fell, ending the auction. The fresh water bottle was removed and replaced with a delicate compass. Next item, palm compass, silver grade. The auctioneer spoke at a medium speed, enunciating each word clearly. Soon, the compass was sold for 140 gold coins. After that, there were 2 silver grade armors. The auctioneer's voice became louder. Ladies and gentlemen, please pay attention to the next magic sale, which is as high as gold grade. Let me introduce Feathered Serpent Sale. 2 black iron ranked fighters carried a large wooden box onto the field. They opened the wooden box, revealing a sail that was neatly folded and almost stuffed to the brim. The auctioneer then described in detail the size, length, and other data of the sail. The atmosphere in the hall became much more lively. In the end, the Feathered Serpent Sail was sold for 980 gold coins. Seeing this, ZD gradually came to a conclusion. Overall, these prices were very reasonable. Copper, silver, and gold coins were the main currencies that circulated between the continents and played a huge role in large and small trade. In the Sacred Empire, The basic living expenses of an ordinary person were between 50,000 and 30,000 copper coins, which was 0.5 to 3 gold coins. The house price in a big city was around 10,000 copper coins per square meter, which was 1 gold coin per square meter. A baron's annual income was around 4,800 gold coins. The purchasing power of gold coins was very strong. As for the auction items, most of them were in the field of navigation. After all, Blunt Blade City was a sea city, and there was a huge demand for navigation. ZD observed the auction items while listening to the person in charge. The black market auction was not hosted by a single force, but by the mayor's office, the two major families, and the Clam Cloth Merchant Guild. The first two formed the highest level of Blunt Blade City, while the latter was one of the 6 major merchant guilds of the Sacred Empire. Naturally, it was a good thing for ZD that many forces were working together to organize the auction. ZD also learned about the many auction records in the auction, as well as the historical transaction prices of many auction items. Overall, this black market auction was mid-level, and the highest grade was gold grade. Blunt Blade City was not a big city, and the strongest person was the mayor, who was a gold grade warrior. From these auction records, ZD also figured out the financial strength of her main competitors. Excluding unexpected people, her main competitors were the mayor's office and the two major families. ZD's main goal this time was to buy some alchemy materials to make maintenance puppets. Among the materials required for the puppet, there were quite a few mid-tier materials. It would be difficult to gather these materials in a short time in Blunt Blade City's market, but it would be easy to get them in an auction. She had already obtained the list of auction items through the person in charge. There was only a brief introduction on the list, and the materials were all in the second half of the auction. ZD was not in a hurry and showed great patience. During the first half, she repeatedly made bids through the magic device. Although she did not have a strong need for these equipment or magic tools, she needed to confuse her opponents so that they could not easily see through her shopping preferences. I didn't expect there to be an elder of the Wisteria Merchant Guild in the Justice Pirates. No, even if he's not an elder, the fact that he can take out an elder's token shows that the two of them have a close relationship. Captain First Seal also joined in. He used the name of Killing Major General Chiao and also got a box. Because ZD casually made bids, many of the auction items took the initiative to join in. Captain First Seal could not judge anything for a while and could only continue to observe quietly. The first half of the auction soon ended. This kind of black market auction was held at least once a month. During the intermission, the people in the field whispered to each other. Some were talking about the auction items, some were reminiscing about old times and building relationships, and some were raising funds. At the beginning of the second half, there was an accident. The auctioneer announced, "Friends, please pay attention to a special item. This is a gold-grade magic scroll called the Ship Spirit Restoration Alchemy Scroll. Friends, you may not know much about this, so I'll introduce the origin of this item in detail. The person who made it is not ordinary." With the auctioneer's explanation, everyone's attention was attracted. ZD was quite surprised. It's the Ship Spirit Restoration Scroll? It's still made by Tucker. There's no mistake, it's exactly the same. Captain First Seal snorted. This scroll is specially supplied to the Navy and the Spy Department. How dare it leak out? Hateful Imperial vermin. Tucker had a strict contract with the Empire and would not sell it to two parties. For such an important war material to leak to the outside market, it was very likely that the Empire's personnel were corrupt and manipulated under the table. The starting bid for this item is 1,000 gold, and each bid is at least 50 gold. Now let the auction begin. The auctioneer introduced a long paragraph and announced the official auction. The field was silent for a while before someone made a bid, 50 gold coins. Immediately, bids rose one after another, and the price was raised to 1,350 gold coins. ZD had also made a bid. At this moment, her brows were tightly furrowed. She wanted to get this alchemy scroll, but she had limited funds and had not achieved her main goal. She was already feeling pressured. 1,500 gold coins. ZD hesitated for a moment, but still made a bid. The Wisteria Chamber of Commerce bids 1,500 gold coins. The auctioneer was stimulated and raised his voice. Captain Furseal was shocked. The Justice Pirates are so rich? During the day, they exchanged a ship spirit restoration scroll from the Empire, and now they want to buy another one. It seems that there really is a ship spirit that needs to be restored. Seeing Purple Stem's sudden increase of 150 gold, everyone in the auction hall flinched. On one hand, although the scroll was a gold grade, it was a one-time consumable item, and 1,500 gold coins was high enough. On the other hand, not everyone had a ship spirit, and even if they did, it might not be damaged. On the other hand, this was the first time the ship spirit restoration scroll appeared in the market, and people did not have a clear understanding of its value. 1,500 gold coins going once, going twice. The auctioneer began to count down. ZD's heartbeat sped up. The ship's spirit restoration scroll was very profitable for the Justice Pirates. ZD was very clear that 1,500 gold coins was a big profit. 1,500 gold coins going thrice. The auctioneer had just raised his wooden hammer when his eyes suddenly lit up. The city lord's office bids 1,550 gold coins. ZD's expression changed, and she immediately increased the bid, 1,600 gold coins. The city lord's office followed, 1,650 gold coins. ZD gritted her teeth, 1,800 gold coins. There was a wave of noise in the hall. The city lord's office followed again, with a tough attitude, 2,000 gold coins. The person in charge's expression changed, and he could not help but remind, Elder, the other party is the city lord's office's butler. ZD clenched her fists and said in a hesitant tone, 2,050 gold coins. A burst of contemptuous laughter came from the city lord's office box. 2,200 gold coins. This price was very high. The hall was noisy, and everyone was talking about it. Usually, a gold-grade weapon was only about 1,600 gold coins. An alchemy scroll, which could only be used once, was auctioned for 2,200 gold coins, which was very high. Unless there was a strong need, it was obviously not worth it. ZD chose to give up. She ordered the person in charge, check who sold this scroll. I want to buy it, the price can be negotiated. The person in charge wiped the sweat from his forehead and immediately left the box. At the same time, in another box, the fur captain sneered. The city lord's office bought it? They dare to buy this kind of equipment? Immediately, he made up his mind to report this matter. The nature of this matter was serious, and even a gold-grade city lord would not be able to handle it, and would have to obediently spit out the alchemy scroll. But it was more difficult to find the source. After all, the black market was managed by one of the 6 major chambers of commerce. Chapter 349. Blunt Blade City Black Market Auction. Not long after the auction of the ship's spirits restoration scroll, ZD's group finally received the first batch of goods they planned to purchase. A female fighter stood on the stage with a small wooden box in her hands. A beam of light shone on the box, while the rest of the box was dimmed. The box was slowly opened by the female fighter, revealing a small pile of metal ingots inside. Under the light, the metal ingots shined with a dazzling silver light. Everyone's eyes were focused on the metal. ZD's heart warmed as she thought, it really is mithril ingots. Mithril was a rare metal, much more valuable than gold. It was very light, as malleable as bronze, but harder than steel. In poetry, this metal was praised as light as a feather, as hard as a dragon's scale. Of course, this was an exaggeration. More importantly, mithril had a strong affinity with magic. It was very good at conducting magic and magic energy. So, most of the uses of mithril were to create magic tools, or as the main material for drawing formations. The auction officially began, and the price of the box of mithril ingots kept rising. When the price gradually stopped rising, ZD made her move and suddenly quoted a high price. Is it the Wisteria Chamber of Commerce? Someone still followed, not scared. ZD raised the price again, showing her determination to win. 3, 2, 1, bam. The auctioneer finished the countdown. Congratulations to the Wisteria Chamber of Commerce for successfully buying this box of mithril ingots. The mithril ingots were taken down and sent directly to the box where ZD's group was. A person in charge of the black market came with them. He smiled and talked to ZD. As the two of them were talking, a low shout came from the hall. Arcanite, am I seeing things? I didn't think there would be Arcanite in this auction. Why isn't it on the list of items? Obviously, this is a special item that was inserted in the middle of the auction. Everyone discussed while looking at the small pile of Arcanite on the stage with heated eyes. Arcanite was a type of synthetic metal, while adamantine could be found in natural veins. This was the biggest difference between the two. And in terms of price, Arcanite was even more expensive than adamantine. It was a high-grade alchemy material. Adamantine, on the other hand, was in the mid to high end. This was mainly because the main method of refining arcane gold was to combine adamantine ingots with arcane crystals and other materials. ZD's attention was immediately drawn to it. Now that the transaction was over, the receptionist of the black market tactfully retreated. ZD made a bid twice, but the price of Arcanite kept rising. Finally, it was bought by the only two great families in Bluntblade City. In the private room of the city lord's mansion, the head butler gritted his teeth. If it wasn't for the fact that the ship spirit repair scroll cost me so much money, how could I have lost? Arcanite's auction set off a small climax. Next, congratulations to the Wisteria Chamber of Commerce for successfully obtaining the orichalcum ingot. Congratulations to the Wisteria trading firm for obtaining these 3 tons of sea blue Oregon. Let us congratulate the Wisteria Chamber of Commerce, the new owner of this pile of obsidian. ZD frequently purchased a large amount of alchemy materials. This action attracted the attention of everyone present. ZD's acquisition target had been completely exposed. It's not good if this continues. Although the black market's auction is held once a month, these materials were hoarded for a season before being auctioned together. We just bought the Arcanite, and the expenditure exceeded our budget. Someone, contact the head butler of the city lord's mansion. As local forces, we must work together to stop the outsiders. We can't let the Wisteria trading firm stir up trouble in Bluntblade City. The representatives from the city lord's mansion and the two great families quickly communicated in secret and reached a certain degree of cooperation. Then they began to fight against ZD, driving up the prices. ZD bought them one by one, using higher prices to buy all kinds of alchemy materials. My lady, it's not good if this continues. The representative of the Wisteria trading firm was already sweating. Flute and Sandow's expressions were also ugly. They understood that they were being targeted by the local forces. Under the mask, ZD's expression was resolute. It's fine. Another item was displayed in the hall. It was also a small wooden box. Inside was a pile of silver-blue metal ingots that had a certain luster. Adamantine. ZD's eyes were slightly burning. The production of adamantine was very low, and its rarity was comparable to mithril. It also had a strong affinity to magic and was more often used to make weapons and armor. Adamantine was relatively heavy, but its greatest strength was its hardness. It was by far the hardest metal known to the public. Its hardness was far beyond that of steel. The righteous pirates lacked adamantine. They had obtained some from Labyrinth Island, but after a period of consumption, there was not much left, and they had to replenish it in large quantities. A small box of adamantine ingots, starting at 1,500 gold. Each bid must be at least 100 gold. Let the auction begin. The auctioneer shouted. Before the others could react, ZD immediately bid. 2,000 gold. The hall was silent for a moment. Everyone was shocked by ZD's bid. But the city lord's mansion's butler immediately bid through the magic device. 2,100 gold. ZD sneered. 3,000 gold. The city lord's mansion's butler and the people from the two families narrowed their eyes. Just as some of them were hesitating and wanted to raise the price, they heard ZD bid again. 3,500 gold. The city lord's mansion's butler and the people in charge of the two families froze. They could feel the determination of the Wisteria Chamber of Commerce, so they could only grit their teeth and give up. The adamantine was neatly won by ZD. Her unyielding attitude made everyone who participated in the auction look solemn, and they all began to whisper to each other. Although the Wisteria Chamber of Commerce is broken, their strength is still amazing. Why are they so eager to buy these materials? Is there something big going on? Damn it, I won't be able to buy many alchemy materials for my family in this auction. What should I do if I can't complete the task given by my family? The adamantine was immediately sent to the box. After paying the gold, ZD looked at the nearly 10 boxes in the box and sighed. This way, the most difficult part of the procurement target has been completed. The materials in the box were not all of them. The ocean wave, or that ZD bought before, was not among them. These ores weighed 3 tons and were placed outside for the time being. The specific quality had already been personally confirmed by D. Lu, who had gone out on a special trip. On the stage, someone suddenly ran up and whispered to the auctioneer before leaving the stage. Next, there's a special treasure. The auctioneer's face still had a trace of surprise. Everyone, please take a look. 4 agents from the black market went up together with a suitcase. After the suitcase was opened, everyone saw a pile of black crystals. They were puzzled. The city lord's mansion's butler exclaimed. The people in charge of the other 2 families also recognized it. They could not sit still and stood up. These black crystals were long and short, big and small, but they were all long. They were dark and emitted an inexplicable chill. Their auras were not the same. There were bronze, black iron, and silver. To be honest, although I've heard of this treasure for a long time, this is the first time I've seen it. The auctioneer sighed. They look like crystals, but in essence, they are the essence of the soul. By absorbing them in a certain way, whether an extraordinaire cultivates Do Chi, magic, or even divine arts, they can strengthen their soul and increase their spiritual power. At this point, the hall was already filled with continuous exclamations. The auctioneer finally announced, "That's right, these are soul crystals." The hall was in an uproar. The creation of soul crystals required the use of necromancy. Every soul crystal represented a fresh life. The more intelligent the life, the higher the quality of the soul crystal. When it came to necromancers, people's expressions changed. But when it came to soul crystals made by necromancers, people yearned for them. Such a large amount of soul crystals was definitely rare in the market. 2,000 gold. Before the auctioneer announced the starting price, ZD had already won the bid. In your dreams, 2,500 gold. The city lord's mansion's butler suddenly shouted. 3,000 gold. One of the people in charge of the 2 families exhaled. 3,500 gold. The other person in charge of the family was fearless. ZD snorted coldly. 5,000 gold. The auction house was stunned for a moment. Then, someone in the hall made a bid. 5,500 gold. Do you think we will be intimidated by you? 6,000 gold. I must get this item today. 6,500 gold. Everyone, give me some face. I will bid 7,000 gold. What's your face worth? 7,500 gold. Everyone, there are so many soul crystals. Our strength is limited, so we must bid together. After the auction, we will distribute the funds according to the amount of money we take out. How about it? Good idea. Count me in. Thus, someone gathered everyone's strength and made a bid of 8,000 gold. However, 8,000 gold was still not the end. The price was still rising. The auctioneer was so excited that his voice trembled slightly. ZD also made a few bids in the second half of the auction. She only raised the price by 100 gold each time. In the end, she helplessly gave up. The final price of the soul crystal was 9,100 gold. This price had already surpassed most gold-grade weapons and was close to the lowest grade of sacred weapons. After the successful transaction, the auctioneer's face flushed red with excitement. He knew that even though the soul crystal was expensive, the final price of 9,100 gold was still a bit too high. This was mainly because the atmosphere of the auction was too heated. Everyone was competing with each other and had already lost part of their rationality. It was a kind of impulsive shopping. The soul crystal transaction was the climax of the entire auction. After the auction, everyone was clearly tired and couldn't muster up any energy or drive. ZD once again made a few moves. First, she bought granite essence, obsidian essence, and a series of earth-type resources. Then, she bought neutralizers, grinding agents, maintenance oil, and a series of other potions. Finally, during the auction of antiques, she bought a completely damaged gold-grade armor, a large pile of broken ancient pottery, and an obsidian gargoyle whose mind core had been pierced by an arrow. After the auction ended, not only did ZD perfectly complete her mission, but she also had a harvest that exceeded her expectations. The arcane gold and soul crystals that she sold not only gave her enough strength to last until the auction ended, but also left her with a lot of gold. Chapter 350. The monthly auction was over, and the crowd dispersed and left the venue. Under the cover of the night, there was little movement. The first seal watched as ZD and the others boarded the carriage, but did not follow them. Instead, he quickly walked in another direction. Soon after, he turned a few corners and knocked on the door of a house in a remote location. The door was not opened, and the house was silent. The first seal grinned and took out a token from the pocket of his underwear. He held the token and waved it at the door before putting it away. The next moment, the door opened silently. The first seal pushed the door open and entered before closing the door behind him. Behind the door was an old man with an oil lamp in his hand. The house was dark, and the light from the oil lamp was very weak. It could not even illuminate the old man's entire figure. Spy 708, follow me to the room. The old man narrowed his eyes and stared at the first seal for a while before slowly turning around. The first seal had two identities. On one hand, he was Rear Admiral Chop Joe's right-hand man. On the other hand, he was a secret agent of the Empire, mainly responsible for monitoring the internal affairs of the Empire's navy. The token that the first seal had just taken out was plain on the surface, but in fact, it indicated his identity as a secret agent. The token had to be held by him for it to be effective. The first seal stayed where he was and shook his head. My time is limited, and I still have a mission. This time, the information is urgent, but not complicated. The first information, the ship spirit repair scroll made by Tucker was sold in the black market auction just now. The second information, a large number of soul crystals suddenly appeared in the second half of the black market auction. The old man paused and immediately turned around. A large number of soul crystals? It was not surprising that soul crystals appeared alone. The keyword of the first seal's information was a large number, which meant that the seller of the soul crystals was very likely a necromancer. Necromancers were not only wanted by the Sacred Empire, but also by other races and continents. The old man's face became quite serious. The first seal opened the door. I've given you the information. I'm leaving now. The old man nodded. After the door closed, the old man immediately returned to the room and used a magic device to send this important information. The first seal walked on the street, his footsteps getting faster and faster. He was supposed to follow ZD's group closely, but he was delayed by the necromancer's report. But I have to. This intelligence is very important. The local agents of the Empire will definitely know about it and will mobilize all their forces to search for the seller. At that time, if they find out that I was there but didn't report it, they will definitely find trouble with me. As a spy, the first seal was well aware of the priority of all kinds of intelligence. Information on necromancers had occupied the top 10 priority ever since the rules had been set. Is it possible that this soul crystal came from the Justice Pirates? The first seal began to run, naturally associating the two together. However, he immediately shook his head because there was no evidence to prove his conjecture. His marine identity allowed him to enter and leave the city in the middle of the night. However, they couldn't help him find information about the seller of soul crystals from the black market. That was why he had sent this information to the Empire's spy agency. The Clamcloth Chamber of Commerce could not withstand the pressure from the secret agents. If the soul crystal really came from the Justice Pirates, then it means that they have come into contact with necromancers, and even establish some kind of cooperation with them. If that's the case, then my task will be easy. If they come into contact with necromancers above the gold rank, I'm afraid they will provoke the lunatics of the Carnage Sanctions Institution. Thinking of this, the first seal couldn't help but shrink his stubby neck. The first seal sped up and passed through the city gate again. Soon, he saw ZD's carriage on the mountain road. He breathed a sigh of relief. It's good that we didn't lose them. He ran on the hillside and jumped between the rocks, using the dense forest to hide his figure. He was very agile and flexible. He didn't continue to close the distance, but maintained a large distance. With his dog's nose and special fighting skills, he was a very good tracker. Looking at the carriages in the mountain road from afar, the first seal began to summarize what he had learned so far. That Justice Pirates have amazing financial resources. This is very unusual. According to the intelligence, the Justice Pirates were established not long ago. Is there a big force behind them? Is it the Wisteria Chamber of Commerce? Or did they secretly plunder a large number of cargo ships? But although there have been a lot of incidents at sea recently, the sea is still relatively calm. According to the latest intelligence, the Justice Pirates are heading to the Sky Pillar CEI. Did they find something important there? Did they really find something valuable? Is that why they're so rich? Although they bought a lot of things, they were mainly alchemy materials. What do they need so many alchemy materials for? To upgrade the ships? The Empire's docks should be more cost-effective. Did they recruit alchemists or alchemists recently? The first seal suddenly froze. He saw many figures on the hillside in the distance. He wasn't the only one tracking the Justice Pirates. The first seal identified the two leaders of the group after a brief identification. These two people came from two big families, and they were famous silver agents in the area. The first seal immediately understood. Haha, a strong dragon can't suppress a snake in its own territory. The Justice Pirates were too strong at the auction, and now they're suffering a backlash. In the city, the mayor's office and the Clamcloth Chamber of Commerce were there. These two families had scruples and didn't dare to make a move. But outside the city, they had the freedom to act freely. If the Wisteria Chamber of Commerce hadn't been annexed by the Empire, these two families wouldn't have made a move. But now, the Wisteria Chamber of Commerce was in shambles. The number of guards of the Justice Pirates could be counted on one hand. It was no wonder that the two families were tempted to make a move. Well, let's let them explore the situation. The first seal stopped moving forward and hid behind a boulder. No one noticed. On the hillside, the ambush team officially began. Two silver agents tore open magic scrolls at the same time and activated the spells recorded in the scrolls. Suddenly, 6 huge rolling stones formed out of thin air and rolled down the hillside. The rolling stones were round and twice the size of the carriages. The sound they made immediately attracted the attention of ZD and the others. Trouble is coming. ZD sighed softly. Flute and Sandow jumped out of the window and stood on the roof of the carriage, ready to fight. The Justice Pirates had a total of 8 carriages, mainly carrying the 3 tons of navy blue, or the valuable mithril, adamantine, and other materials weren't large in size. But because the mountain road was long and narrow, the carriages were stretched out and most of them were on the path of the Rolling Stones. The threat that the Justice Pirates faced wasn't just the Rolling Stones. After the Rolling Stones, the ambush team began a charge. The 2 silver agents were the sharpest spearheads. In the carriage, ZD began to chant. Mana fluctuations were immediately emitted. There's a black iron mage. Priority to eliminate her. In the process of diving, the 2 silver agents looked at each other and instantly reached a consensus. ZD's spell was cast, and the hillside suddenly bulged. The Rolling Stones rolled on the hillside and either changed their course or rushed into the air. The horses pulling the carriages neighed, accompanied by the frightened shouts of the drivers. But the boulders either changed their course or flipped over their heads and finally fell into the sea. First Seal calmly watched the battle and secretly commented, "The ambush team doesn't have a real mage and can't control these Rolling Stones, otherwise it wouldn't be so easily broken by a black iron mage, but the ambush team has achieved their goal. They used the boulders to attract the mage's firepower and bought time to rush in front of the enemy. The Justice Pirates are at a disadvantage. The ambush team had 2 silver agents and several black iron agents. The lineup was stronger than ZD, Flute, and Sandow. The rest of the drivers had already jumped off the carriage and frantically ran for their lives. Flute snorted and rushed out. Sandow, on the other hand, held a short saber and stood guard beside the carriage, quietly waiting for the enemy to come. One of the silver agents on the ambush team was entangled by Flute, while the other led the team to rush toward Sandow. But in the next moment, the silver agent who was leading the team suddenly spat out blood and almost fell on the hillside. Ambush! He rolled back a few times and half-knelt on the ground, his face pale and his hand holding his forearm. There was an arrow in his forearm, and blood kept flowing. It turned out that a flying arrow was aimed at the silver agent's heart. At the moment of life and death, the silver agent couldn't care about anything else and could only block it with his arm. He unleashed all of his Do Chi and managed to block the deadly arrow, but at the same time, he temporarily lost an arm. Fighting skill, assassination arrow. Higher up the hillside, the one-eyed elf stood on a branch of a big tree. The bowstring was still trembling slightly. He was the one who started it. The silver agent wanted to stand up, but suddenly felt a strong dizziness. The silver fighter cursed loudly. F***CK, there's poison on the arrow. The 2 warnings in a row greatly weakened the ambush team's fighting spirit. In the carriage, ZD continuously cast several spells. Small fireballs, icicles, wind blades, and so on were thrown one after another at the charging black iron agents. Boom, boom, boom. The black iron agents were beaten until they couldn't even raise their heads. The 3 blades dashed into the crowd of black iron gladiators, and their blades danced in the air. The black iron gladiators were slaughtered, and their momentum came to an abrupt stop. Cho attacked again and shot 3 arrows in a row. The silver agent who was hit by the arrows could only desperately run away to avoid the arrows. He ran further and further away from the battlefield. Damn it! The silver agent who was still entangled with Flute noticed the situation and quickly ordered the others to retreat. Don't chase. ZD's order was immediately given. Flute and Sandow stopped. Cho didn't join them, but continued to support them on the hillside. The first seal in the dark had a drop of cold sweat on its forehead. What a powerful archer. According to the information, this Cho was originally an elf noble, and that elder of the Wisteria Chamber of Commerce, that masked black iron mage. What's going on? She can cast spells instantly. Chapter 351. Where am I? The crew member slowly regained consciousness. He looked around and realized that he was in a broken cabin. The seawater had already flooded half of the cabin, and he was half lying on a wardrobe, which allowed him to float on the water. I remember now. The crew member hugged his head and endured the pain as memories flashed through his mind. He worked on the special wreck as the sailor of a cargo ship. However, they crashed into an iceberg and the ship started to sink. The crew member lost in the struggle and was trapped on the ship. He could only watch as the limited number of lifeboats carried the many crew members and rowed out. Please don't leave me behind. The crew member begged on the side of the ship. No one replied, nor did the lifeboats turn around. Just as the crew member was in despair, the sharks attacked. The huge white sharks destroyed the lifeboats one by one, and the crew members fell into the water, becoming food for the sharks. The crew member was stunned. As the special wreck continued to sink, the sharks also entered the ship. The crew member struggled and was finally trapped in the cabin. What do I do? What do I do? I can't swim out at all. That white shark must be waiting for me in the corridor. The crew member was in despair. He couldn't find any weapons, but the water level was gradually rising and gradually covered the door frame. The crew member laid on top of the wardrobe and was gradually raised by the water level, and the distance between him and the top of the cabin became smaller and smaller. He was at his wit's end, and the narrowing living space made it difficult for him to breathe. He became more and more desperate and started to shout as if to vent until his throat became hoarse. His body was weak, and he started to sob. As he sobbed, he started to repent. He prayed to God, begging for God's salvation, and hoped that his soul could go to God's kingdom after death. Almighty blue charm God, my Lord, my Supreme, wait. After praying a few times, the crew member showed a pained expression. His memory started to fade, and he hugged his head, screaming in pain. Bang! The next moment, his entire head exploded. Blood, brain matter, shattered skull, hair, and so on splattered everywhere. The rising water level stopped, and the wooden wardrobe, the wooden walls, and ceiling of the cabin gradually disappeared, returning to the rectangular operating table and metal walls. Whoosh! With a soft sound, the cabin door slid smoothly to the side. Sang-soo walked in slowly. He immediately used necromancy magic in an attempt to condense the soul of the test subject. He had failed. Looks like this captive's original faith is very strong. Even if I've successfully altered his memory and made him lose all memories of his past, it's still not enough. However, his original faith still exists, and it has seriously affected his conversion to Blue Charm God. Sang-soo sighed. Faith was the secret of the gods. Although Sang-soo was a necromancer and a half-baked blasphemy priest, he was only at the level of black iron. He was too far away from the level of God. In that case, the best test subjects should be those believers whose beliefs are very shallow and not very firm. Of course, it would be best if it's a non-believer. Unfortunately, there are too few non-believers. After coming out of the Fog Island and retrieving the memory manufacturing device from the wreckage of the Pig Kiss, Sang-soo began to study the memory crystal. After obtaining the treasure of the ship Ghost in the underwater secret room, Sang-soo began to try to become a qualified blasphemy priest. So far, he had made a lot of gratifying progress. However, it's still too slow. I have to hurry. I need to achieve real success as soon as possible. Sang-soo knew that time was of the essence. The matter of the Sky Pillar Sea I would definitely blow up, and it would not be able to be hidden. By then, all the survivors would attract the attention and capture of various forces. For the Justice Pirates, this was not the only problem. There was also a huge problem, the Fog Island. It was related to the legendary sorcerer, the Alchemy Grandmaster, and several divine artifacts. ZD must have contacted the Hundred Needle Clan leader, expecting the Hundred Needle Clan to play a decisive role in mediating. This possibility is not high. Saving myself is the best way out. I have to succeed in my research, steal Blue Charm God's divine power, supplement it in the fairy tale of the mermaid, and produce pearl foam. The sooner, the better. Thinking of this, Sang-soo quickly cleaned up the cabin and then threw himself into a new experiment. The sea at night was cold and piercing. The young Murloc quietly floated in the shallow water. His body remained upright, one arm extended, fingers cold, forming the shape of a knife. Silver Do Chi kept running in his arm, and the sea around his arm was affected by the fluctuations of the Do Chi and gradually became turbulent. Now, the young Murloc roared in his heart and suddenly opened his eyes. Fighting technique, flowing blade. Chi after a soft sound, the bright silver Do Chi spewed out from the young Murloc's forearm and instantly formed the shape of a long blade. The chi sound continued and did not stop. Success. The young Murloc was happy. I actually succeeded in the first try. Sure enough, the feeling just now was not wrong. This is also one of the advantages of the divine bloodline. The young Murloc dived into the underwater whirlpool 3 times to transform his Do Chi. The combination of the divine bloodline and the saint-level Do Chi art had an amazing effect. It completely transformed his explosive Do Chi into a light and thin Do Chi. Taking advantage of the little time he had, the young Murloc began to practice his fighting technique. He carefully selected a few fighting techniques from the Pagoda Genie's memory bank, all of which were suitable for the Sharky's human form. The first fighting technique he practiced was the flowing blade. When he recalled the contents of this fighting technique, the young Murloc had a strong feeling that he could successfully use it on the first try. Sure enough, his first try produced results. He used the flowing blade fighting technique. In the dark sea, the silver blade was very eye-catching. The young Murloc carefully sized it up. The lower half of the blade was his forearm. The upper half of the blade extended from the forearm of his hand. The entire blade was about 1.5 meters long. The blade was long and narrow, and it was large at the bottom and small at the top. The body of the flowing blade was not Do-Chi, but seawater. The principle was that the young Murloc used Do-Chi to envelop a portion of the seawater, allowing the seawater to circulate rapidly in a narrow space. Therefore, the chi-chi-chi-chi sound produced by the flowing blade was actually the sound of the water flowing rapidly. Perhaps it is because the water is the blade, and Sha-Ching has the divine level Murloc bloodline and is closest to water, that I was able to use it on the first try. The divine level bloodline had a great advantage, and it affected many aspects. Not only did it affect the cultivation of Do-Chi, it also greatly helped the cultivation of fighting techniques. Let's test its power. The young Murloc floated up to the surface of the sea and quickly found a reef. The flowing blade lightly touched the surface of the reef. The chi-chi sound was immediately loud, and the surface of the reef was cut into powder. On the surface, the two sides of the flowing blade were very thin, but in essence, it was unceasingly flowing seawater. Therefore, when it cut, it was like a saw cutting rapidly. This undoubtedly increased its power by a lot. The young Murloc maintained this fighting technique, and at the same time rotated his elbow, allowing the flowing blade to gradually penetrate into the reef. In the end, the flowing blade completely cut through the reef and came out from the other side. During the whole process, the young Murloc did not feel any obvious resistance, but the difficulty of maintaining the fighting technique increased by a lot. Moreover, the consumption of silver-level Do-Chi during the cutting process increased by a lot. The content of the fighting technique's main points is very reasonable. The main point of the flowing blade fighting technique is to maintain it and maintain it. Because the body of the sword is rapidly flowing water, it is not like ordinary swords that have a hard body. Once it is cut or collided, the water flow will easily collapse and can only rely on the fighting technique to maintain it. Therefore, this fighting technique requires a vigorous, continuous output of Do-Chi and at the same time, spirit. The more vigorous the spirit, the longer it can maintain the circulation of Do-Chi inside and outside the body. And the young Murloc was very good at these 2 points. Not to mention the vigorous Do-Chi, the combination of the divine level bloodline and the sacred level Do-Chi art was beyond the reach of most people. In terms of spirit, the young Murloc had used a lot of soul crystals and had long been several times stronger than other fighters of the same level. In the future, as he continued to use soul crystals, his spirit would continue to increase. In short, the flowing blade fighting technique was very suitable for the young Murloc. Rays of light shone from the horizon, and the sun gradually rose, jumping out of the sea. The night passed just like that. Time passed really quickly, but this night I also gained a lot. The young Murloc breathed in a breath of fresh air, looked at the rising sun, and then looked at the flowing blade. It's still not enough. The flowing blade fighting technique has many variations, and I have only just mastered the most basic style. There's still many things that I need to familiarize myself with and practice. Sigh, the situation is too tense. I can't place my hopes on others. I must seize this last moment of peace and do my best to increase my fighting strength so that I can face the future war. Chapter 352. Before the light of dawn had completely illuminated the sea on the horizon, ZD and the others had already boarded the deep-sea monster fish. They didn't return to Razor Sharp Town, but directly unloaded the supplies halfway, took the boat, and left the coast. The fur seals lay in a hidden place on the hillside and helplessly watched the boat leave. With the help of the boat and the towed safe, a space storage equipment, They sent a large number of supplies underwater to the deep-sea monster fish that had come pick them up. The toad safe was obtained from the secret chamber at the bottom of the sea and was a high-end alchemy item. It originally belonged to the necromancer and blasphemy priest, but after the Justice Pirates deceived it with pearl foam, it was successfully opened. Not only were the original treasures inside emptied, but the Justice Pirates also changed the Toad Safe's ownership settings after the event and truly used it for their own use. The Toad Safe was very heavy and shaped like a toad, half a person tall, so it was not convenient to carry. It could only play a role in the process of transporting goods. ZD was very cautious. Although they repelled the native forces, it was inevitable that there would be tails following them until the delivery of the supplies at sea. With the help of the deep-sea monster fish's powerful detection methods, they did their best to eliminate surveillance. Returning to the cabin arranged for her, ZD couldn't help but yawn. She was a little dispirited. After all, during the battle in the middle of the night, she had cast a dozen spells in a row, which made the ambush team dizzy and unable to maintain the offensive. After repelling the enemy, ZD didn't relax at all. She was tense and vigilant at all times. Now that she was back in the cabin, she relaxed and immediately felt a strong sense of fatigue and sleepiness. But she didn't fall asleep immediately. She still insisted on meditating and recovering her magic power. She knew how to work hard and was very self-disciplined. This was a good habit she developed after falling out with her father and living on her own. No matter how tired she was, she tried to maintain her combat power at a certain level. After meditating for a while, Song-Su's voice sounded outside the cabin door. "Miss ZD, I have something important to ask you." ZD opened the cabin door and saw the old scholar. The old scholar didn't rest all night and carried out a dozen experiments in a row, but thanks to his body being transformed by necromancy, he was still in high spirits. "My blasphemy priests have run into some trouble in cultivating them. I hope to consult you about your experience and knowledge in this field." Song-Su went straight to the point. ZD was only an undead acolyte who had mastered the soul-devouring spell, but she had devoured the soul of the ship ghoul. The person Song-Su was seeking advice from, or more accurately, the ship ghost. ZD's expression suddenly became serious. Cultivating the blasphemy priests and fighting for divine power was one of the keys to solving the current predicament. There was no room for error. "I will do my best to help you. However, even though I've devoured the soul of the ship ghost, I may not have what you want. The soul-devouring technique has many drawbacks. Even if the soul-devouring technique is successful, there is no way to obtain all the memories of the target soul. Furthermore, Ship Ghost was in a very bad state at the time, so his memory was very fragmented. I will sort out his memories as soon as possible, and I will need your help with this." "Oh." Song-Su was slightly taken aback. "Please give me your orders, Miss ZD. I need you to refine a soul gem," ZD said slowly. One of the drawbacks of the soul-devouring spell is that devouring external souls will make one's own soul bloated and produce impurities. I need to remove these impurities. These are all fragments of the ship ghost's soul, and my soul can't digest or absorb them. These fragments will also contain some memories. If you don't transfer the fragments into the soul gem, and I remove them directly, we won't be able to obtain these memories." Song-Su frowned. "I've heard of this kind of alchemy item, and it does require necromancy to refine. However, I don't know how to refine a soul gem." ZD smiled. "Do you still remember the ship ghost badge? That badge contains the method to refine a soul gem. You can use necromancy to infuse it, and use your spirit to probe it, and you'll know. As for the specific alchemy materials, we have all of them. So that's how it is." Song-Su didn't expect to receive such an unexpected reward. He immediately bid farewell and began to refine the soul gem. ZD watched Song-Su leave and was about to close the door when Fat Tongue ran over with a tray. President, I've prepared breakfast for you." ZD smelled the aroma of the breakfast and immediately felt hungry. She invited Fat Tongue into the cabin and tasted the breakfast. "It tastes good. Did you cook all of this?" ZD was surprised. Fat Tongue smiled and said, "President, when you were asleep, I was the chef of the Justice Pirates. Thank you for your hard work. ZD nodded. President, since you're awake, then the Purple Vine Chamber of Commerce. Fat Tongue spoke with hesitation. ZD shook her head. Now is not the time. If I expose my identity now, it will affect the Chamber of Commerce. I haven't been in charge of the Chamber of Commerce for long, and without me, the Chamber of Commerce can still operate. There won't be any major problems in the short term, as long as you have an idea in mind. Fat Tongue smiled happily. These days, he was very happy. ZD's awakening was beyond his expectations. It was a complete surprise. Fat Tongue had just returned from ZD's place when he saw the young Murloc eating heartily in the dining hall. He had just returned. Cultivating battle chi made him very hungry. Unlike ZD, he ate fresh, live fish. He didn't even scrape off the fish's scales. He directly used his shark-like sharp teeth to constantly chew and tear. He swallowed the whole fish in 2 bites, not even sparing the internal organs. Humans couldn't eat like this, but it was perfect for Murlocs. Next to the young Murloc was the big guy. On the big guy's plate, there wasn't any vegetables or fruits, but a large basin of black mud. The big guy used a huge wooden spoon to dig out the mud and put it into his mouth, constantly swallowing. Sometimes, after eating, he looked at the young Murloc and smiled foolishly. The young Murloc's cheeks were full of fish. He reached out and patted the big guy's arm, smiling at the big guy. The father and son ate happily. At the same time, in the southern part of the Empire, Needle City. In the castle of Needle City, an exquisite breakfast was placed on the desk, but the patriarch of the 100 Needles family had no appetite. The middle-aged man with a broken arm was thinner than before. His face was pale, and his eyes were heavy. He looked exhausted. The patriarch of the 100 Needles family couldn't eat when he thought of his son's whereabouts. As a former great aristocrat in the South, the glory of the 100 Needles family had faded. They surrendered to the Shengming emperor and barely kept their bloodline. But with Zhang Jin's disappearance, the situation of the 100 Needles family took a turn for the worse. This was because Zhang Jin was the only heir of the 100 Needles family appointed by the emperor, and it couldn't be changed for any reason. Once Zhang Jin died, the 100 Needles family would have no heir. A nobleman without an heir had no future. As a result, the 100 Needles family was strongly attacked and pushed aside by various forces. These noblemen and large forces were like hyenas smelling blood and flesh. They all wanted to make a fortune from the gradually falling corpse of the 100 Needles family. Knock, knock, knock. A steady male voice came from outside the door. Sir, Armtile wants to see you. Come in, said the patriarch of the 100 Needles family. The door opened, and a tall, middle-aged man with strong arms walked in. His name was Armtile, and he was the most trusted right-hand man of the patriarch of the 100 Needles family. Have you found any information about Zhang Jin? Asked the patriarch of the 100 Needles family. Armtile shook his head. Since Zhang Jin's disappearance, the 100 Needles family had been searching for him with all their strength and almost exhausted all their property. Unfortunately, they didn't find any valuable clues. Armtile was the person in charge of the search for Zhang Jin, personally appointed by the patriarch of the 100 Needles family. Sir, I'm here because I heard the news. Are you going to sell the cultivation method of the Swiftbee mount? Armtile spoke frankly. The patriarch of the 100 Needles family sighed and glanced at the wall of the study. Not long ago, there were several famous paintings hanging on the wall. But in order to raise funds, these paintings have been sold. The 100 Needles family was so poor that they couldn't even maintain the last bit of dignity of a noble family. Seeing the patriarch's expression, Armtile knew the answer. He hurriedly persuaded, Sir, the Swiftbee mount is one of the foundations of the 100 Needles family. You can't sell it. If you need funds, I'm willing to contribute my manor and fields. The patriarch of the 100 Needles family smiled bitterly. Armtile, my most loyal knight, I appreciate your kindness. But it's not that simple. I'm selling this method not only to raise funds, but also because I have to sell it. The 100 Needles family has no power to keep such a precious thing. If we keep it, I'm afraid we'll be attacked more violently or even robbed. How come? Armtile was shocked. The patriarch of the 100 Needles family shook his head and said nothing. In the Sacred Empire, there were many forces that disliked the 100 Needles family. Previously, Jean Jean said he was a member of the Knights Templars. This was the strong connection between the 100 Needles family and the Shengming Emperor. However, Jean Jean was missing, and she was probably dead. Therefore, this relationship was broken. The 100 Needles family was in a precarious situation. Armtile was silent and clenched his fists. The atmosphere in the study was very depressing. At this moment, the steward opened the door and shouted excitedly, Sir, there's news about the young master." "What?" The steward gasped. "Just now, we received a blackmail letter. It said that pirates captured young Master Jinjin and his fiancée, Miss ZD, and asked us to pay the ransom. Is it a liar?" Armtile didn't change his expression. During this period, because the 100 Needles family had done their best to search and rescue, everyone knew about this matter. Therefore, there were many cases of fraud and blackmail. "No, it's different this time." The steward shook his head. "There's a special mark on the letter, and the content of the letter is encrypted. We can only decipher it with our code book." "What?" Bang! The patriarch of the 100 Needles family suddenly stood up, and the chair fell on the floor. Chapter 353. Inside the deep-sea monster fish. Golden flames burned brightly as it floated in the air. In the center of the flames was molten adamantine. The flames illuminated the surroundings. It was reflected on ZD's face. At this moment, the girl's beautiful face had a serious and nervous expression. She was going all out and concentrating on controlling the alchemy array. This alchemy array was drawn on the floor tiles of this cabin and extended to the surrounding metal walls. The main body of the array was a six-pointed star. The star was surrounded by the outermost double circle. Between the star and the circle, there were dense magic runes. And in the center of the array, there was a magic device. The lower end of this magic device was connected to the deep-sea monster fish's mana pool. It was precisely by consuming the reserves in the mana pool that ZD was able to activate this temporary alchemy array. If she relied on her black iron-level mana alone, she would have to increase it by at least 100 times to barely reach the minimum standard to activate this alchemy array. The array diagram came from the memory of the tower spirit and the war dealer, so it was naturally very exquisite. The flames it created had a terrifying temperature, but it was confined in the center of the flame. It didn't matter even if the palm touched the outer flame, because there was no heat to speak of. Seeing that the adamantine in the center of the flame quickly melted into liquid, ZD hurriedly used her mental power to guide it. The adamantine liquid was drawn into a thin filament and quickly flowed out of the center of the flame into the hemispherical object beside it. The main material of this blue hemispherical object was aquamarine stone. ZD had purchased a total of 3 tons of navy blue or from the black market auction. Aquamarine stone was the standard material for making maintenance puppets. It was worth noting that the sphere of this hemispherical aquamarine stone had been specially hollowed out, like a small bowl. ZD first guided the adamantine liquid into the spherical groove in the small bowl, and quickly plated the spherical groove with a layer of adamantine. Then, the adamantine followed the inner side of the hemispherical object and spread in 8 directions at the same time. It spread all the way to the edge of the sphere before the 8 golden lines stopped. Then, from the end and middle of each golden line, it penetrated into the interior of the hemispherical object. Wherever the adamantine went, the aquamarine stone was forcibly melted. Under the control of ZD's mind, the refined gold threads gradually became denser and denser, forming the prototype of an exquisite and gorgeous spell formation. After completing this step, there was still a little liquid essence left. ZD took out a tube of medicine and drank it while drawing out the liquid essence. Although her mind power had surpassed the black iron rank and reached the silver rank, carving the alchemy array had consumed a lot of her mind power, and she needed to recover it immediately. ZD's spiritual power quickly recovered, and the liquid essence was temporarily stored in another place. She continued to process the mithril ingots. The mithril ingot was quickly melted and turned into liquid. ZD's spirit continued to guide the mithril liquid into the hemispherical object just now. The mithril lines shuttled through the hemispherical structure. Some of them formed their own routes, but most of them revolved around the prototype of the magic circle that had just been cast with adamantine and were constantly being processed on top of it. According to the three-dimensional diagram in his mind, some of the mithril lines intersected with the adamantine lines, some of them intertwined with the main line like smoke snakes, and some of them intersected to form nodes. Suddenly, one of the nodes began to burn, and black smoke quickly rose. ZD's body swayed, and her expression suddenly became extremely bad. The alchemy failed. She immediately found the reason. She had poured a little too much mithril liquid into the node just now, and at the same time, she did not maintain her mind power well, causing the magic at the node to be unbalanced. Constructing magic circle nodes had always been a difficult part. Now, the node was burning very badly. Not only were the connected adamantine and mithril lines affected, but at the same time, the aquamarine stone at the node was also severely damaged, almost burning a fingernail-sized hole. ZD could not help but feel dejected. Just because of this slight mistake, the main body became incomplete and a fingernail-sized hole appeared. This meant that ZD would have to use the aquamarine stone from elsewhere to make up for it. But no matter how much she tried to make up for it, the original integrity was lost. This small hole meant that she had to bid farewell to the final product of perfect quality. ZD quickly overcame the depression in her heart. She secretly told herself that she was not good at refining puppets. When she was studying in a magic academy, her focus was in the field of potions. And this time, as long as she succeeded in refining the maintenance puppet, it would be enough. There was no need to extravagantly ask for quality, and now was not the time to pursue quality. ZD had no choice but to stop. She had to first fill in the hole and then repair the Dharma threads. The second time she refined the node, she held her breath and concentrated, going all out. A few seconds later, she exhaled a mouthful of turbid air and relaxed a little. Finally, she had crossed this hurdle. Half an hour later, she had set up all the nodes, but failed again halfway. Then, she began to carve magic runes. After the runes were carved, she began to inlay miniature gems to reinforce the magic circle. After the reinforcement was completed, she obtained a half-finished maintenance puppet, which was only 1/3 of its components. After drinking the second tube of potion, ZD gasped for breath and summed up her experience. Puppet alchemy and potion alchemy have similarities, but there are also many differences. The carving of a magic circle requires a lot of concentration and has high requirements for subtle control of the mind. So, the nodes of a magic circle are often difficult. Fortunately, I have the alchemy circle conceived by the ward dealer, which greatly reduced the difficulty of alchemy for me. After a short rest, ZD immediately began to refine the second set of components. She failed again at the node, and the second set of components was successfully completed. Although I've been very careful, the subtle control of the mind is not something that can be improved immediately just by paying more attention. This is an ability that most people are born with. That's why not all mages can become alchemists. Next is the key. ZD rested for a longer time this time, and waited until she felt good before she began to act. The two hemispheres began to merge. This was the most difficult step in the entire alchemy process. ZD's mind power needed to control more than a dozen places at the same time, and while firing the hemispheres of stone, she had to connect the normal lines inside with each other. After 15 minutes, ZD completed this step. She was on tenterhooks, because it seemed to be successful, but in fact, it still needed to be verified. She mobilized her mind and activated the blue sphere. Bang! With a muffled sound, the stone sphere suddenly shattered. ZD suffered a backlash. Her face was pale, blood flowed out of her nose, and her heart sank to the bottom. She failed. The two embryonic magic circles were indeed connected, But when she was instilling magic, the nodes collapsed and the normal lines were burned. Then in an instant, it caused magic to become chaotic and finally led to an explosion. The power of the explosion itself was not small, but because of the magic circle, it was greatly limited. ZD did not suffer any physical damage from the explosion, but her mind, because she was constantly maintaining it, suffered a backlash and was not lightly injured. ZD hurriedly drank a mental healing potion. Looking at the pile of rubble, the girl sighed regretfully and helplessly shook her head without saying a word. The refining failed, and the materials that were invested before were basically wasted. The damage caused by magic made them unrecognizable, and there was no way to recycle them. The loss of resources was only one aspect, and ZD did not particularly care about it, because she had already estimated the situation of failure and bought many alchemy resources. What made her worried was the time she wasted because of this. At this juncture, time was the most precious. I still have energy left. I can't stop. I have to hurry. ZD forced herself to support her body, adjusted her state, and began the second alchemy. 3 hours later, she looked at the floating maintenance puppet in the center of the magic circle with joy. I finally succeeded. This maintenance puppet was like a bluestone sphere, with only a propeller spinning on top of its head. The light of the alchemy circle faintly transmitted from the stone sphere to the outside. In terms of quality, it's just an incomplete product, but it can be used in the end. Next are the other auxiliary components. The difficulty of refining these auxiliary components was completely inferior to the main body. Soon, ZD completed the set. Combining these components, the maintenance puppet had many arms, and at the front of the arms were fingers, needles, and pens. In addition, a portable tool ball box hung under the main body, like a white fat belly. ZD forced herself to stay awake and gave the maintenance puppet the task of repairing deep-sea monster fish. She observed for a while, and after confirming that the maintenance puppet was operating normally, she could no longer hold on and returned to the cabin, falling asleep. She slept very deeply. By the time she woke up, it was already evening. The second batch of supplies arrived in the afternoon. Some of them were exchanged goods from the Empire and sent to the docks. The other part was to instruct the person in charge of the Wisteria Chamber of Commerce to purchase low-end goods in Blunt Blade City, such as elemental crystal stones, hard copper, and so on. Because it was delivered during the day and the value was not high, the local forces of Blunt Blade City did not make things difficult. Of course, the more important reason was that they had already suffered a loss. In Blunt Blade City, the only one who could suppress the Justice Pirates was the City Lord. But how could a dignified, gold-level fighter with a high position and power lower his status to attack a few carriages? You've recovered well. I'm a little hungry. ZD checked herself and found that she was in good condition. But the first thing she did was not to replenish her food, but to check on the maintenance puppet's work. When she saw the maintenance puppet again, it was repairing the defensive array. On the puppet's small arm, 2 knives, 3 gun barrels, and 2 pens were operating almost at the same time. Its movements were extremely skillful. The alchemy array made of air has been repaired by it. The defensive array is also mostly repaired. Although it's incomplete, this efficiency far exceeds the combined efforts of Song, Su, and I. It's practically half an alchemist. ZD was very pleased. Alchemist Apprentice, Alchemist, Alchemist, Master Alchemist, Grandmaster Alchemist, and Grandmaster Alchemist were the titles in the field of alchemy. At present, Song Su could only be considered an alchemist apprentice, and ZD was only qualified to be an alchemist in the field of potions. Both of them were not cut out for the field of alchemy. The reason why ZD invested energy and time in potions was because she felt that it could make money at that time, and it was not a real hobby. However, she did have some talent in potions, but in the end, her bloodline was too low level. This is already the second day in Razor Sharp Port. Time was tight, so ZD ate a big dinner and went into the cabin, preparing to refine the second maintenance puppet. But at this time, Song Su came to her door, This is the soul crystal I refined. ZD carefully inspected it. The soul crystal was half the size of a palm and was completely transparent like glass. It was prismatic and very light, only slightly heavier than a feather. Not bad, ZD evaluated. Song Su shook his head. I have no talent in alchemy, but fortunately the refining method in the badge is very easy to understand and grasp. Since she had the soul crystal, she immediately changed her original plan and temporarily gave up on refining a new maintenance puppet. She bid farewell to Song Su and returned to her cabin, holding the soul crystal in her hand, and began to meditate. She sank into her spiritual space and began to use undead methods to remove the impurities in her soul. Soon, wisps of soul fragments were extracted from her soul like smoke and mist. These soul fragments left her spiritual space and were stored in the soul crystal in ZD's hand. When ZD was done and opened her eyes again, she felt a sense of relief from the depths of her soul. Her soul did not seem to have any changes, and the upper limit of her spiritual power had decreased, but ZD knew that she had benefited greatly. Her spiritual power was far more durable than before, and the hidden dangers in the depths of her soul had disappeared. She looked at the soul crystal in her hand. It was originally transparent glass, but now it was filled with a grayish-black color, and there was a faint silver halo at the edges. This halo meant that the soul stored in the crystal was at the silver level. ZD used her spiritual power to enter the soul crystal. As if she was reading a messy and incomplete book, she saw the scenes of the ship Ghost's memories. Adding on the memories that she obtained from absorbing the ship Ghost's soul, ZD spent 2 hours to copy and organize the valuable contents of the memories. This record contained the ship Ghost's experience in undead magic, the techniques to make soul crystals, and the methods to become a blasphemy priest. Of course, it was still incomplete. After all, when ZD swallowed the ship Ghost's soul, the latter was already heavily injured and was on the verge of collapse. The record was, of course, given to Song Su. Song Su's early progress in becoming a blasphemy priest was crucial for the Justice Pirates. As for the soul crystal, ZD kept it. She had other uses for it. That night, the military port, Wei Sheng was awakened from his sleep. This young man had short blonde hair and eyebrows. His eyebrows were long and thick, connected at the center of his eyebrows, and then extended diagonally to the tip of his eyebrows, and then to his forehead. Overall, his golden eyebrows looked like a big V character. Although he was disturbed from his sleep, Wei Sheng was not angry, but with a trace of seriousness, he looked at the person who woke him up. What happened? He was the Count of the Empire, and was currently in charge of the Marine Fleet Admiral Yen Tan's affairs. This strict imperial soldier was very clear. If there was nothing important, he would not be disturbed at night. Chapter 354. Report. Some spies have found out that an alchemy scroll for repairing a ship's spirit had appeared in an auction on Blade Mountain Island. It has been verified that this scroll is genuine and came from the hands of Grandmaster Tucker. The information reported by the Fur Seals reached the upper echelons of the Navy about 24 hours later. He reported 2 pieces of information, one of which was about soul crystals and necromancers. However, this information was directly reported to the upper echelons of the spy agency and was currently being investigated. The matter of the ship's spirit restoration scroll was reported to Wei Sheng because it was related to the Navy. Wei Sheng immediately frowned, thoughts flashing through his mind. Ship spirits repair alchemy scroll is very practical and very versatile. Many major generals and vice admirals responded well. This kind of scroll must be controlled and classified as a high-level military necessity. It won't be as easy to exchange as the first batch. The direct descendants of the Navy have to be at least major generals. Those recruited pirates have to have at least saint-level authority. Tucker would never leak it. He signed a strict contract with the Empire, and the losses outweigh the gains. In this case, there's only one possibility: the corruption of the upper echelons of the Navy. There are a total of 50 ship spirit restoration scrolls, and only 20 of them were released in the first batch. The question is, which of the scrolls in the black market are they from? There were very few ships with ship spirits, because the cost of creating such intelligence was very high. The most common way was to use a spell, Awaken the Construct. This was a spell that could only be cast by at least a saint-level mage. The casting standard was very high, and only a small number of saint-level mages could reach it. After the spell was cast successfully, it would cause a permanent loss of mental strength, and the upper limit of mental strength would drop. The negative impact on mages was very large. Ship spirits were rare, and ships with ship spirits were naturally far more powerful than the ordinary ones. And the admirals who control these existences have their own forces or backers and connections. It was very difficult to find out how the scrolls were used from them. There are too many implications. If I offend too many people, I won't have an easy time. Wei Sheng was very clear. However, since this matter was discovered, it had to be investigated. This was Wei Sheng's responsibility. If he didn't investigate and was found out in the future, it would definitely be a crime of covering up or dereliction of duty. The most convenient thing to do is to get the scroll that leaked out. Wei Sheng thought of this and asked, "Who is the Marine general closest to Blunt Blade City?" The subordinate immediately reported, "It's Major General Chiao." Because the fleet was severely damaged by the storm, they are currently resting in the secret harbor of Knife Point Town. Wei Sheng frowned again. He knew that Major General Chopper Chiao was very upright and reckless. Because of his experience, he hated pirates very much and was a fierce general in the Navy. He was suitable for charging, but not for investigating corruption cases. Other than that, Wei Sheng asked again. "It's Major General Tan Mo," the subordinate immediately replied. Tan Mo. Wei Sheng raised his eyebrows slightly. He knew that this person was a warlock with a good bloodline. His personal combat strength was not bad, and he also had connections with the upper echelons of the Empire. But this rear admiral was greedy by nature, good at taking advantage of others, and was a real worm in the Marine. Wei Sheng disdained him the most. "Give this case to him." Wei Sheng was a little hesitant and asked other candidates. The subordinate shook his head. There are no more admirals in the Navy within 1,000 nautical miles. They had to be at least admirals. The rear admiral of the Imperial Navy had to ensure that his personal strength was equal to or higher than gold. Only with such strength could he suppress the local tyrants and have the power to push forward the investigation. Wei Sheng hesitated for a moment between Chopper Chiao and Tan Mo, but finally said, "Then give Tan Mo an order to go to Blunt Blade City immediately to investigate the case and find clues." If he gave Chopper Chiao, it was likely that he would do something bad. If he gave Tan Mo, it was likely that he would be corrupted and blackmailed. But with his ability, he could still find some clues. Although he disdained his moral character, Wei Sheng had to admit that this Major General Tan Mo was still capable. Soon, Major General Tan Mo received the military order. Tan Mo was a middle-aged man with a fat body, a stubby neck, and a pair of small eyes that shone brightly. He was carefully wiping a shield with a handkerchief. The surface of a shield was polished until it was shiny. Under the bright light, he admired the shiny shield and kept clicking his tongue. "Knock, knock, knock." Suddenly, there was a knock on the door, disturbing Tan Mo. "What's the matter?" Tan Mo frowned. He saw a trace of dust and quickly wiped it with his handkerchief. "Major General, there's an urgent military order." The first mate's voice came from outside the door. Tan Mo sighed and put the shield on the table. "Sigh, what kind of urgent military order is it? Bring it up." The door opened. The first mate smiled at Tan Mo and bent down to put the military order on the table. Tan Mo reached out a chubby arm, slapping down on the military report. Then, the report was dragged over the top-quality desk that was as smooth as silk towards him. Then, he lay back comfortably on the recliner and slowly opened the military order. After reading for a while, his small eyes suddenly flashed with a flash of light. He said to himself, "It's not to exterminate pirates, but to investigate a corruption case." What an unexpected task. Ahem. He sat up straight, and his expression became serious. He ordered the first mate. The military order is urgent. Change course immediately and go to Blunt Blade City on Knife Mountain Island. Yes, sir. The sea became lively at night. The soldier's execution was quite high. The flagship treasure chest was the first to change course, followed by the other warships. They were aggressive and headed straight for Knife Mountain Island. The night's voyage was very smooth. At dawn, the impatient Major General Tan M.O. raised the monocular and saw a small dot on the horizon. It was Knife Mountain Island. The light of dawn shone through the sea. Deep-sea monster fish floated quietly in the shallow water. Outside its body, 3 fat blue balls were attached to the hull, working tirelessly. The sun shone through the round window, bringing some changes to the temporary alchemy cabin. ZD, who had been busy the whole night, suddenly realized. It's already the 3rd day. Her eyes refocused on the gargoyle puppet in front of her. This gargoyle puppet was half the height of a person. It was dark black and emitted a layer of enamel. It had 2 hands and 2 feet, a pair of broad bat wings on its back. Its head was like a bat's with wide ears, a short nose, large nostrils, and a mouth full of fangs. And in the center of its chest, there was a ruptured wound. The elementary mind core had been shot through by an arrow. ZD bought this gargoyle puppet from a black market auction. According to the introduction of the auction house, it was said to be one of the spoils of war obtained by a pair of mercenaries exploring the underground tomb. But because the most valuable mind core had been completely destroyed, the price of the gargoyle puppet could not be raised. It would cost a lot to recycle its materials, so it was better to buy obsidian and so on directly. This kind of product was usually sold to alchemists, but there were not many alchemists in the field of puppets who happened to have this kind of need. At least it was extremely rare in Blunt Blade City. Therefore, the gargoyle puppet was treated as an antique and sold at auctions. It was unsold several times. When ZD bought it, the price was very low. After refining 2 defective puppets and 1 inferior maintenance puppet, ZD began to repair the gargoyle puppet. There were at least 4 alchemy arrays on the puppet, which were interconnected and worked together. The other arrays were very intact, but the elementary mine array was badly damaged. The core was completely destroyed. It could be seen that the archer who subdued this puppet was quite good at archery, at least silver level. Next, ZD adjusted her breathing, and with a serious expression, took out a prism-shaped soul gem and inserted it into the wound in the center of the gargoyle puppet's chest. The edge of the wound had been treated by ZD, and it was just the right shape. The soul gem was inserted into the hole seamlessly. ZD then mobilized the mana pool and poured mana into the gargoyle. A few seconds later, the gargoyle's eyes suddenly opened, and there seemed to be 2 blue flames floating in its pupils. ZD's head was slightly dizzy for a moment before she came to her senses. She was completely controlling the gargoyle with her mind. She didn't need to speak, and with just her mental manipulation, the gargoyle obediently opened its mouth and stretched out its arms, changing from a squatting position to a standing position. ZD then made it spread its wings. Its wings were wide and big, and when they spread out, it made its body look very small. Awesome. Really awesome. ZD was overjoyed. The gargoyle's aura was as high as silver level, and it was a combat puppet of good quality. After ZD's repair, it glowed with a new life. ZD knew that she had used a trick. She didn't repair the elementary mind array. This kind of alchemy array was very difficult to repair, and the cost of rebuilding it was not small. In order to replace the elementary mind array, ZD used the soul gem. With the latter as the core, she set up a very simple and basic array. Of course, this array involved the magic knowledge of the necromancy school. From this point of view, she had to thank Ship Ghost. In that case, we can actually mass-produce silver-level combat puppets. ZD's heart skipped a beat. They had mastered the refinement of soul gems. There were many blueprints of gargoyles in the Tower Spirit's memory. Soul gems and alchemy puppets are very compatible. There is no need for the mind array at all. The cost of this array is too high, but the soul gem is cheap and beautiful. ZD was a businesswoman, and when she looked at a problem, the first thing she looked at was the cost, especially when it came to business. The cost of refining such a gargoyle is low, and it can be sold in large quantities at a low price. In a short time, it can impact the market share and become a popular long-term business. However, once the gargoyle is thoroughly analyzed, the other schools of magic will find a way to suppress the soul gems sooner or later. ZD continued with her work. Next, she had to strengthen the gargoyle's heart, using adamantine to form a thick and hard breastplate. Of course, the surface of the adamantine would be covered with black, making it similar to the gargoyle's body and look like one. It would be best to lay down a layer of array, specially used to strengthen the heart. Unfortunately, I don't have this ability. ZD could set up a defensive Dharma array, but she could not fuse this Dharma array with other Dharma arrays. This level was already beyond the scope of her ability. P.S. Let's make an update first. We'll continue tomorrow. Chapter 355. Almighty Blue Charm God, my Lord, your divine might is like the endless waves of the ocean. You can pour down from the heavens and cover the earth. Your divine power is the endless sea breeze. Sangsu knelt on the ground and clasped his hands together. He prayed wholeheartedly to the statue of Blue Charm God. Shin power appeared his body drop by drop through some unfathomable method. He prayed over and over again. When the time was up, Sangsu's body had already accumulated half a bowl of divine power. No more divine power would appear if he prayed any longer. The best time to pray was recorded in the teachings of Blue Charm God. It was during dawn and evening. Each time period was about 25 minutes. During this time period, the most divine power could be obtained from praying. If one did not pray during this time period, the efficiency of obtaining divine power would be greatly reduced. Generally speaking, the more powerful a god was, the more extensive his priesthood was, and the more powerful his authority was, the longer the best time to pray. For example, the Shengming Emperor. The entire day was the best time for his believers to pray to him. Sangsu prayed nonstop. The best time to pray had already ended, but he still did not stop. He did not stop until the divine power appeared less and less, until there was not even a drop of divine power in 10 minutes. He slowly stood up and walked to the table under the statue. There was a large shell on the table. It was the fairy tale of the mermaid. As long as I continue to output divine power and condense it into a pearl foam, it will be of great help to my most beloved goddess. Sangsu's mind was filled with this thought. As to why he had this thought, he did not investigate it. He covered the shell with both hands. As he poured all his divine power into the shell, he kept blaming himself. Why? Why am I only at the level of a normal believer? I only believe in the great Blue Charm God. Sangsu's heart was filled with guilt. After a dozen seconds, he had no more divine power left. A huge sense of exhaustion hit him. I need to rest. Before resting, I need to have a full meal. I can only continue praying if I replenish my mental and physical strength. Another thought filled his mind. Sangsu moved instinctively. He walked to the cabin door. Pust! With a sound of air, the cabin door slid to the side. Sangsu walked out of the cabin, and the cabin door closed behind him. The next moment, he saw the young merman and ZD. Who are you? Sangsu was stunned. In his eyes, the young merman and ZD were strangers. How did two strangers appear on my ship? Sangsu suddenly became nervous. At this moment, the hatch behind him closed. The closing of the cabin door was like a switch that suddenly triggered a secret place in Sangsu's soul. All of a sudden, countless memories surged in like a flood, almost drowning Sangsu's mind. Sangsu covered his head with his hands. His body shook violently, and then he fell to the ground. ZD and the young merman did not move to support him. Instead, they stared at him with vigilance. Sangsu's face was pale. He gasped for breath, and his eyes rolled back. His whole body trembled as if he had been electrocuted. After about a minute, Sangsu suddenly coughed violently, and his eyes rolled back. He curled up his body and knelt on the ground like a lobster, retching nonstop. "Song-Su?" the young merman asked tentatively. Song-Su quickly gestured and coughed a few more times. "I'm fine. My memories have recovered." Huff huff. "Oh my God, this feeling is terrible." ZD was very calm. "You should answer a few of our questions first." Song-Su lay down with his back against the metal wall. His physical strength was not exhausted, but his mind was damaged. His soul was shaken, and he still had a strong sense of dizziness. He looked at the young man and woman. "I know. In order to ensure that nothing goes wrong with me, I agreed on a dozen questions with you before the experiment to verify my condition. These questions are..." Song-Su then spoke frankly and answered his own questions. His mental state gradually stabilized. With such a performance, Song-Su gained the trust of the young merman and ZD. "Drink some potion quickly," the young merman reminded him. Song-Su only dared to take out the potion after getting permission. The potion was not on him, but in the storage compartment in the corner. The opening and closing of the compartment also involved an alchemy array. It contained the screening methods of the necromancy school. Song-Su opened the compartment smoothly, took out the potion, and poured it into his body. This action proved that his soul had not been distorted or strongly changed. "So, you succeeded?" ZD's tone was joyful. Song-Su drank a tube of potion. The dizziness quickly subsided, but he still could not stand up on his own. He was still sitting on the ground. Facing ZD's question, he first nodded, then shook his head slightly. Both the young man and young woman were somewhat confused by this declaration. Song-Su then explained, "Long before I rushed into Heaven's Pillar, I had already successfully modified my memories. But at that time, I was not confident in praying to Blue Charm God. After the battle at Heaven's Pillar's Eye, with Miss ZD's help, I obtained the ship ghost cultivation record. It contained the enlightenment of the ship ghost when he became a blasphemy priest. It greatly increased my confidence in deceiving the gods. There is also a large amount of memory modification techniques, the most important of which was the technique of hiding memories. It can condense our past memories into a point and hide them in the depths of our soul. It can also design a switch. When we touch this switch, it can make our memories recover in an extremely short time. Now, the two of you have seen with your own eyes that I have succeeded. I have deceived the goddess. The divine power I obtained from praying this time was all poured into the fairy tale of the mermaid. The memory concealment technique was also very successful." The young merman nodded. He recalled that before the pillar rose, Song-Su had asked him to help with the memory crystal to help him recover his memories. The two of them speculated that the ship ghost, who was alone, must have a way to recover his memories. Now they had the answer. It was the memory concealment technique. The young man was confused. "Won't the gods find out if he condenses his own memories?" Song-Su answered, "It's like this. Even the gods cannot completely see through the mysteries of a soul. Unless they have a special divine position, the gods can only see through the souls of most devout believers and completely see through the souls of fanatics. Even the gods do not have a strong insight into the souls of ordinary believers, as well as a wide range of believers." At this point, Song-Su hesitated. He looked at the two people in front of him and said, "From his point of view, the belief in the gods is actually a transformation of the believer's soul. It allows the power of the gods to continuously seep into the believer's body and soul until the transformation is complete and the believer becomes the possession of the gods." The young man and young woman immediately revealed extremely shocked expressions. Song-Su's words were too sinful, too blasphemous. For anyone with religious beliefs, it was a bolt from the blue. It was disgraceful and unpardonable. From this point of view, the gods were all schemers who deliberately harvested the souls of their believers. Seeing that the two of them were shocked, speechless, Song-Su continued with difficulty. "The souls of intelligent life forms are important resources. If the gods are like this, then don't the demons of the abyss or the merchants of other planes use souls as a currency for transactions? Especially the demons. They have a tireless demand for souls. They often use cunning tricks, contracts, and so on to extract the souls of their contractors. The young man and young woman did not speak for a long time. Song Su's words were like a giant hammer, smashing the fortress of faith in their hearts. Not long after, the young man exhaled a mouthful of turbid air and looked deeply at Song Su. Perhaps it is because of this secret that necromancers are wanted by all the gods. The young man accepted the truth faster than the young woman, because on the island of confusion, he once mistakenly thought that he was Zhun Jin and was full of faith in the Shengming Emperor. In the end, when the truth was discovered, his faith collapsed. After leaving the island, the young man's heart was filled with confusion. He did not know which god to believe in and was in the stage of having no faith. He instinctively became wary of believing in the gods. Therefore, later on, he rejected the recruitment of the Bishop of Life, Hao Fu. This was actually part of the reason. However, in order to make it more convenient for him to lead the Justice Pirates, he usually pretended to be praying to appease people. Later on, when he participated in the Battle of the Sky Pillar CEI, the young man was forced to use Goddess Blue Charm as a weapon. Such a unique experience reduced his reverence for the gods to the bottom of the valley. He understood in his heart, no matter how high the gods were, they were just some powerful beings. It was just that this kind of power was too great for most people to understand. The young man's faith castle itself was a ruin, so it was easier for him to accept Song Su's words. Okay. Zidi's face was pale. She put her hand on her heart and felt that she was on the verge of collapse. Because of your words, I feel that my faith has been violently shaken. Song Su smiled bitterly. In fact, I have now become a general believer of the Dark Lord. I believe that soon, I won't even be a general believer. At this moment, I understand why the necromancers don't believe in gods. Most of the necromancers are part-time profane priests. Zidi took a deep breath. Old scholar, it's better not to say such things in the future. I'm also a companion who has gone through so many things with you, but just now, I couldn't help but hate you. Song Su sighed. Thank you for understanding me. Of course, I know the price of saying this. Just now, I really didn't want to hide it from you, even if the two of you will hate me. This sentence touched the hearts of the young man and woman again. Zidi turned her eyes and looked at the young man. She took a deep breath and said, "There are some things I should have told you earlier." Chapter 356. The teenager smiled at ZD. Didn't you say sorry in the central tower? There's something else, ZD said with a heavy expression. Soon after I took over the Wisteria Chamber of Commerce, I was assassinated. In order to protect myself, I had to join forces with the war traffickers. I was too weak to negotiate at all and was forced to marry the Hundred Needles clan. The war traffickers secretly destroyed the Hundred Needles clan's team, intending to support you as the White Sand City Lord and become his most loyal chess piece. In fact, the shipwreck was also caused by me. I sensed the death of the war traffickers because the contract disappeared. At that time, the captain of the Pig's Kiss was malicious, so I poisoned him. But he counterattacked at the last minute, causing the Pig's Kiss to sink. This secret was seen through by Scab on the 4th floor of the central tower. But at that time, the teenager and others were still on the 3rd floor and did not hear this conversation. However, the youth in Song Su didn't seem surprised at all. The teenager's smile remained unchanged. You all know. ZD was puzzled, but she immediately reacted. It's Zhun Jin. She guessed right. Although she was unconscious afterward, Zhun Jin was bound to be tortured as a captive. As for what happened on the 4th floor, Jin Jin spilled everything without holding anything back, especially after seeing the manufacturing device of the memory crystal. ZD breathed a sigh of relief. Although they already knew, she took the initiative to say it. It was like tearing a layer of cocoon wrapped around her heart. The whole person had a feeling of getting rid of the burden and becoming a new person. After experiencing life and death on the island, the dangerous adventure when she was unconscious made ZD more determined and brave. There's one more thing, and it's good news. ZD said again. The Hundred Needles clan replied. According to our previous discussion, I and the Hundred Needles clan's leader agreed to meet secretly on the Flame Island to negotiate and hand over the hostages. ZD didn't expose the truth of the island. Now, the Patriarch of Hundred Needles thought that the Pig Kiss was hijacked by the Justice Pirates. His family's heir, the president of the Wisteria Chamber of Commerce, and some valuable people on the ship became the hostages of the pirates, waiting for ransom. Although he used a magic device to send messages and needed a codebook to decipher the message, the truth could not be revealed casually. This was in consideration of the possibility that the Hundred Needles clan had a major change. He believed that when the time came for the real negotiation, the Hundred Needles Patriarch would have a wonderful expression when he saw ZD joining the pirates and giving up the covenant. The three of them were confident in the negotiation. Zhenjin was the only successor of the Hundred Needles clan. It must be fate that we met. The girl's cheeks were flushed, and her gaze was as gentle as water. The two gradually got closer and closer, and their attention was focused on each other. Cough, cough. Song Su's cough woke the young man and girl up. After regaining their senses, the two were a bit embarrassed. Bless the two of you. Youth is beautiful. Although Song Su was a necromancer, his humanity was not extinguished because of this. The beautiful scene in front of him made the corner of his mouth curl up slightly, and he smiled from the bottom of his heart. The young man and girl separated slightly, but the young man's hand was still holding the girl's. He took a deep breath and looked at the girl with a sincere gaze. Then he turned to Song Su. I also have some things to explain to the two of you. The secret of my transformation into a were-beast is actually the blood core. Song Su's smile did not change. The girl looked at her sweetheart quietly and squeezed the young man's hand slightly, giving him encouragement in secret. Neither of you find it strange? The young man was slightly surprised. To be honest, I had my suspicions a long time ago. Song Su nodded and said, After all, you were the one who took the blood core in the central tower. You took it and negotiated with the Fire Dragon King alone. Since then, I have never seen it again. After leaving Confusion Island, you gained a new Dragon Man form, my lord. When we entered the Eye of the Sea in Heaven's Pillar, my lord, you could even turn into a merman. Since that blood core was carefully placed in the third level by the warlord, then in the warlord's eyes, it was even more precious than the sapphire gold coffin and the fairy tale of the mermaid. Based on your performance, my lord, I speculate that this blood core should have the ability to absorb external bloodlines and transform itself. The young merman sighed and said, You guessed correctly. He looked at the girl. ZD smiled and said, Don't forget, during the Battle of the Central Tower, I took over almost all of the authority. Naturally, I saw a lot of information about the blood core. It also included the warlord's method of using the blood core and the sapphire gold coffin to create man-made magical beasts and were beasts on a large scale. ZD knew more than Song Su, but she did not reveal anything. It was obvious that she was hiding it for her sweetheart. You only know part of it, the young merman said. In reality, there are 3 blood cores in total. 3. ZD and Song Su exclaimed in unison. Yes, the young man continued. The first one is in my body. Do you remember when we ran into danger in the spider forest? The young merman looked at ZD. At that time, my hands mutated into bear claws and I killed the silverblade spider. I know, ZD said with a faint smile. Now that she thought about it, her heart was filled with sweetness. I had many doubts about my ability to shape-shift. Later, I gradually discovered that the blood core in my body was the source of the mutation. It was because I used the first blood core that I escaped danger time and time again and defeated the man-made magical beasts along the way. Later, I saw the second blood core, which was the one on the 3rd floor of the central tower. At that time, I had a strong desire to devour it. Although no one taught me, I swallowed the second blood core based on instinct. The 2 blood cores fused together. I used this blood core to destroy the Flame Dragon King. W what? ZD opened her mouth in shock. The Flame Dragon King is dead. Song Su also looked shocked. He thought that this legendary dragon had been exiled to the outer space in the big explosion. The young man nodded. I had no choice. At that time, the negotiation with the Flame Dragon King failed. We were not sure if the explosion on Confusion Island could kill it. If it could not, it could easily find us, kill us, and take back the divine artifact and war credit. The Blood Core can kill a legendary powerhouse. ZD was stunned. It's not like that, the young man explained patiently. My first Blood Core could not even be converted by the python vine in the river. After absorbing the second Blood Core, it could devour a legendary life form, but it could only do so when the target could not resist. At that time, the Flame Dragon King happened to be sealed by the War Dealer's alchemy array and could not move. Before the Flame Dragon King died, it let go of its mouth and begged for mercy. But I did not dare to believe it. I did not have a strong contract with me. We were too weak. Song Su nodded with an expression of agreement. Sir, your decision was absolutely correct. As for the third Blood Core, it was found on Blue Charm Goddess. The young merman's words shocked the two of them again. Then, the young merman spoke of his conjecture. Because the War Dealer and Blue Charm Goddess worked together, the Blood Core should have been given to Blue Charm Goddess by the War Dealer. The third Blood Core contained a huge amount of merman bloodline. There were 3 divine merman bloodlines in it, and my current state is one of them. The reward of the merman's trial, the Holy Spring Baptism, is actually the third Blood Core. It stimulates the thin bloodline in the merman's body, increasing the density of their bloodline and even awakening their bloodline. So that's how it is, ZD muttered to herself. Song Su was also pondering. The surprise on his face grew stronger and stronger. He pondered and said, the 3 Blood Cores that we know of so far should have been created by the War Dealer. The War Dealer gave the first Blood Core to you, sir. The second Blood Core was placed on the 3rd floor of the central tower by the War Dealer to research and create artificial beasts and war creatures. The 3rd Blood Core was given to Blue Charm God by the War Dealer to help Blue Charm God increase the aptitude of her believers. ZD was puzzled. The value of the Blood Core far surpasses the value of normal divine weapons. Why would the War Dealer put such an important treasure in her body? Sir, the young merman said, my thought is that this might be the War Dealer's method of creating Blood Cores. I think that the War Dealer did not grasp the fundamental mystery behind the creation of Blood Cores. If that was not the case, he should have created more Blood Cores, right? I think that the War Dealer was able to create an environment like Bewilderment Island by using artificial beasts to kill each other and create Blood Cores. ZD, do you still remember the first brown monkey bear we encountered in the cave? At that time, I fought with it to the death and was saved by you. You once fed me the bear's blood. ZD's eyes lit up. Now that I think about it, I still feel scared. Sir, do you know? At that time, you died twice. Not long after you died, you came back to life again. What? The young merman was shocked. ZD pondered. Now that I think about it, perhaps you were faking your death at that time. The Blood Core was being formed in your body. Thus, it created a strange state of repeated life and death. Song Su interrupted at this time. This guess is reasonable, but I'm more inclined to believe that the War Dealer put the first Blood Core in your body. Oh, Song Su said, don't forget the War Dealer's identity. He was a legendary mage and alchemist, but also one of the 10 most wanted criminals. He was an enemy of the Empire, and so was Blue Charm God. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. They had the foundation to work together. The War Dealer gave the Blood Core to Blue Charm God, and Blue Charm God provided the fairy tale of the mermaid and replenished her divine power every once in a while. This was the content of their cooperation. The Empire is invading the Wasteland continent on a large scale. The world's attention is focused on this collision. Of course, the War Dealer wants to get involved. The Wisteria Chamber of Commerce was annexed, but the alliance of Miss ZD and the 100 Needles clan gave the War Dealer some hope. He wants to secretly kill Jinjin and let you take his place to rule Baisha City. In this way, you will not only be the lord of Baisha City, but also a paladin. I've analyzed it before on Mystique Island. When the war between humans and beasts breaks out on a large scale, there will definitely be a lot of divine knights. The war dealer is very likely to support you as a divine knight, my lord. The young merman could not help but fall into deep thought. Song Su's words gave him a new idea. All this time, the young merman who had lost his original memories thought that his strength was not high, only silver rank, and that he came from a lower background. At best, he was an imperial knight, unlike Jinjin, whose family would do everything to rescue him when he went missing. Therefore, he naturally guessed that the blood core came from him. But after Song Su's analysis, the young merman suddenly understood. He actually had a lot of investment value. The war dealer needed to deal with the Empire. He needed a stable channel to help him sell his arms and earn back his funds. More importantly, he needed a spy planted in the upper echelons of the Empire to become his eyes and ears. One day in the future, when the war dealer and blue charm goddess worked together to deal with the gods of the Empire, this spy would play a very important role. From the war between humans and beasts, the war dealer saw this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. As long as he supported the young merman to become a divine knight, then the young merman would definitely become one of the upper echelons of the Empire. In order to ensure the young merman's loyalty, the war dealer used a memory crystal. In order to not expose the young merman's identity, the war dealer spent a lot of money to buy the bloodline of the golden stinger queen bee from the Juka hunting group. In order to ensure the young merman's safety, he gave the young merman a blood core. If that's the case, then the war dealer is obviously very confident that he can hide from the gods of the Empire. ZD suddenly clapped her hands. That's right, the fairy tale of the mermaid. We've always thought that the war dealer obtained the fairy tale of the mermaid unlawfully, and that he could only use part of the power of the artifact. But in fact, Blue Charm Goddess and the war dealer have reached a cooperation and are close allies. This way, the fairy tale of the mermaid can be fully used. Through it, the war dealer is confident that you can hide from the gods of the Empire. So, the young merman looked at the girl. If the Bloody Radiance Sanction Department hadn't raided the Island of Confusion, I would be in the same situation as you, a pawn of the war dealer? ZD was stunned for a moment, then immediately smiled like a flower. The young merman's face was slightly serious. Both of you, about the blood core, what I really want to say is the following. The power of the blood core is wonderful, and it targets the bloodline. It can mass-produce artificial magical beasts and war creatures, and it can also help mermen trace their roots and strengthen their merman bloodline. And the host who controls the blood core can easily transform into any form by consuming the magic energy stored in the blood core and have the cultivation aptitude corresponding to the bloodline. Song Su and ZD were surprised again. However, they weren't that shocked. After all, they had seen the young merman's previous dragonoid form and his current merman form. They more or less understood the progress of the young merman's cultivation. In fact, they had already guessed this. Do you know what this means? The young merman asked. ZD smiled. The war dealer can produce blood cores. We have the tower spirit, and we've also been to the Island of Confusion, so we still have a completed blood core. Maybe we can also refine blood cores in the future. With blood cores, we can break free from the shackles of our bloodline and become geniuses among geniuses. Song Su was filled with emotion. Bloodlines have always been the cornerstone of the entire society, whether it's humans, beasts, elves, or dwarves. It's the same. The war dealer is indeed the world's top alchemist. From a certain point of view, a treasure like the blood core is more terrifying than all the gods combined, because it can shake the foundation of the entire society and cause endless war and chaos. Now that the war dealer is dead, only we know the truth here. We must guard this secret to the death. Even if we use a divine artifact to escape punishment, we must try to hide the blood core. ZD looked worried. Maybe it's not just us. The war dealer had a student called Sharp Diamond. We were on the Island of Confusion, but he never appeared. After I gained full authority, his body wasn't found. The other two's expressions changed. The young man looked at Song Su. No matter what, the most important thing is the pearl foam. With it, we can defend against prophecies and divination, and at the same time, we can deceive the tower spirit, just like how we deceive the toad safe. Once the tower spirit is deceived, we will be able to obtain its entire memory bank and look through all the records. If we can do this, we will be able to obtain the ward dealer's method of refining blood cores and the whereabouts of Sharp Diamond, which will verify our various guesses. Song Su smiled bitterly. I've already done my best, but the current problem is that the efficiency of just relying on me to replenish divine power is too low. I need to cultivate a large number of blasphemy priests to increase the production of divine power. Fortunately, we obtained the cultivation experience of the ship ghost, and our memory control has greatly improved. But whether we can produce blasphemy priests in batches, I still need to experiment. The young man took a deep breath. Do your best. Song Su nodded heavily. Understood. P.S. Nearly 5,500 chapters, ending today's update. Chapter 357. Knife Mountain Island, Blunt Blade City, Prison. Crack, crack. A whip with spikes lashed the butler's body again and again. Every time the whip fell, it would bring out blood and flesh. The butler screamed. Stop it, my lord, stop it, stop it. I was wrong, sir. Please let me go, please let me go. Crack, crack. The one who whipped the butler was the mayor of Blunt Blade City. Let you go? Who told you to buy the ship's spirit repair scroll? How dare you act on your own? The mayor roared and whipped the butler harder. Crack, crack, crack. The butler was beaten until his skin and flesh were lacerated, and he did not look like a human anymore. His pleas gradually faded. Sir, Mayor, please, for the sake of my diligence in the past, spare my life. The butler's breath of life had become very weak. Hearing the steward's words, the mayor's heart skipped a beat. Indeed, the butler was very diligent and responsible. But at this time, the second butler next to the mayor whispered, Sir Tanamo has woken up, but he did not leave the mansion. He is looking for you. The servants have no choice but to temporarily put him in the living room. The mayor immediately frowned. Why hasn't he left yet? Tanmo's fleet showed a swift and decisive attitude and visited the mayor's mansion late last night. Tanmo was a gold-level fighter and a rear admiral of the Navy, so the mayor quickly hosted a banquet to welcome him. Tanmo accepted the banquet with a smile and told the mayor of Blunt Saber City that he was in big trouble. The mayor of Blunt Blade City had been in a high position for a long time, so he immediately recognized the situation. In order to solve the problem, not only did he entertain Tanmo, but he also gifted Tanmo 5,000 gold coins and turned in the ship spirit repair scroll that had just been stored. Tanmo ate and drank to his heart's content. He drank almost half of Blunt Blade Mayor's hidden wine and happily accepted the 5,000 gold coins. At the banquet, he patted Blunt Blade Mayor's shoulder and said, You're my friend. In the end, the mayor of Blunt Blade City accompanied him until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, but Tanmo was too drunk to walk. Left with no choice, the governor of Blunt Blade City could only arrange for him to rest in the guest room of the governor's mansion. After settling Major General Tanmo down, the mayor of Blunt Blade City immediately ordered people to lock up the butler. After sleeping for an hour or two, the mayor of Blunt Blade City woke up in anger when he dreamed that his house was barren. Thinking of the great loss he had suffered this time, he became even angrier and went to the prison to whip the butler to vent his anger. After whipping for a while, he heard a report that Tanmo was still in the city lord's mansion. The second steward was deeply worried. City Lord, Major General Tanmo is famous in the Navy. His corruption and extortion were extremely severe, to the point of being extremely vicious. It was rumored that he could turn a fish's scales full of vitality into a beach. Scraping the bones and sucking the marrow can turn a rich village into a wasteland. He was once stationed in the southwest area of the Imperium. The local fishermen had been extorted by him under all kinds of pretexts, making it hard for the people to make a living. The sea people were in famine and could only survive on mud pancakes. The mayor of Blunt Blade City sucked in a breath of cold air when he heard this, and his heart sank. He gritted his teeth. It seems that the 5,000 gold coins from last night were not enough to satisfy Tan Mo's appetite. Seeing the butler who had fallen into a coma, the mayor of Blunt Blade City was furious and threw the whip in his hand to the guard. "Whip him until he dies." "Yes." The guard held the whip and quickly answered. The mayor of Blunt Blade City angrily left the prison. The second steward followed closely behind, and before he left, he glanced at the butler proudly. The mayor of Blunt Blade City was indignant, but when he reached the living room, he changed his expression. When he opened the door, he saw Tan Mo's fat body lying lazily on the sofa, drinking black tea in satisfaction. On the coffee table, there were exquisite tableware and fragrant pastries. The mayor's eyes trembled slightly, and he immediately smiled. "Good morning, Sir Tan Mo. Did you sleep well last night?" Tan Mo deliberately showed an uncomfortable expression, put down the black tea, put his hand behind his neck, and shook his head. "To be honest, I didn't sleep well. I have a stiff neck." The mayor of Blunt Blade City was stunned. A dignified, golden warrior could sleep until his neck was stiff? This was outrageous. Tan Mo narrowed his eyes, and a hypocritical smile appeared on his face. "I heard that you have a strange treasure called the cool sand pillow. When people sleep, they put their head on it to clear their mind, and it can also help with the cultivation of combat power." The mayor of Blunt Blade City was shocked by Tan Mo's astonishing appetite. After the shock, a strong roar of anger surged up. "My cool sand pillow is the path of divine realm alchemy. When people sleep on it, the combat power in their body will be guided and will continue to cultivate automatically. This is my favorite treasure, and he dares to covet it. He doesn't respect me at all." The mayor of Blunt Blade City narrowed his eyes, stood still, and stared at Tan Mo, the combat power in his body restless. He was the mayor of Blunt Blade City, the local tyrant of Knife Mountain Island, and had always enjoyed the life of a superior. Now his authority was seriously challenged. Tan Mo was not asking for a bribe. He was robbing. For a moment, the mayor of Blunt Blade City had the impulse to kill Tan Mo to wash away his humiliation. Feeling the mayor's murderous aura, the smile on Tan Mo's face became thicker and more hypocritical. He slowly stood up, walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, and looked at the garden under the bright sun. "Do you know, my lord, the ship spirit restoration scroll has been assessed as a high-grade military supply and will be strictly controlled from now on. This matter of yours is very difficult to deal with. This time my superiors have given me a strict order, and I will not be lenient." The mayor of Blunt Blade City snorted. "But I only bought this scroll." No. Tan Mo turned slightly, raised his stubby index finger, and shook it. "The black market that auctioned this scroll is hosted by the mayor's office." The mayor of Blunt Blade City immediately gritted his teeth. "Not just me, but also the Clamcloth Chamber of Commerce." Tan Mo shook his head and sighed. "The Clamcloth Chamber of Commerce. Their backer is too strong. I dare not offend them. But if I don't have a valid answer and hand it to my superiors, I will be investigated and criticized." The mayor of Blunt Blade City. The mayor of Blunt Blade City clenched his teeth, his heart full of anger. This damned guy. He never thought of finding out the truth. He just wants to find a scapegoat. If I don't satisfy his appetite, I'm afraid I'll be the scapegoat. Calm down. Mayor of Blunt Blade City, I don't want to be your enemy. But you see, I don't have it easy either. Tan Mo spread his hands. He slowly walked to the mayor of Blunt Blade City. "I'm actually just like you, a pitiful person who was dragged into this." The mayor of Blunt Blade City turned his eyes away, trying not to look at the repulsive man. If he looked at him any longer, the mayor felt that he might not be able to control himself and kill Tan Mo. He was not afraid of Tan Mo. They were both gold-level experts. What he feared was the Imperial Navy behind Tan Mo, and at the same time, he missed the wonderful life of ruling Blunt Blade City. In the end, he suppressed his anger and said with difficulty, What can I do to get out of this trouble? A smile bloomed on Tan Mo's face, obviously more sincere than before. He gave the mayor of Blunt Blade City a thumbs up. You know the situation clearly. You know when to yield and when to stand tall. As expected of you, my lord. Don't worry, I'll definitely help a straightforward person like you just because of last night's banquet. But 5,000 gold coins is too little. Brother, even if I want to help you, I can't do it. I understand. The mayor of Blunt Blade City nodded with difficulty. Please come with me. The mayor of Blunt Blade City brought Tan Mo to his treasure vault. Tan Mo's eyes seemed to be shining with a dazzling golden light. Meanwhile, the military port. Wei Sheng was sitting behind Marshal Yin Tan's desk, dealing with a lot of military affairs. Bang, bang, bang. Someone knocked on the door of the study, and before Wei Sheng could say anything, the intelligence officer shouted, "My lord, something big has happened. Something big has happened." Wei Sheng frowned, his eyes instantly becoming sharp. "Come in. What's going on?" The intelligence officer immediately pushed the door open and quickly closed it. He quickly walked in front of Wei Sheng and said quickly, "It's information about the gods of the other races." In the eye of the sky pillar in the Night Spirit Sea region, a huge battle broke out. The participants were mainly the Blue Charm religion and the barbarians. The barbarians Frost Ripper Zhua Ye and the Sacred Warrior Man Zhuang won, and the Blue Charm religion suffered heavy losses. The Blue Charm goddess was protected by the god's son and fled. Oh! Wei Sheng was shocked and immediately threw the other military affairs to the back of his mind. Has the information been confirmed? Confirmed. The intelligence officer said, in this chaotic battle, there was Firebeard's third boss Feng Yao, the Mother Tree Pirates, the Justice Pirates, the Stone Pirates, a group of Liquid Eater Tribe Sea Giants, and a large number of other pirates. Swallowing a mouthful of saliva, the intelligence officer continued. There were many survivors on the battlefield, and many people saw the god's son carrying the goddess into an alchemy submarine and successfully retreating. According to our calculations, the leader of the Justice Pirates, Ryu Fu, is the god's son of the Blue Charm religion, a fishman with the blood of Sha Qing. Wei Sheng was bombarded by this information, and his state of mind was completely shaken. The intelligence officer handed him another report. This is the summary of the battle after combining many pieces of information. Wei Sheng immediately took the report, and the thin paper trembled slightly in his hands. Something big had indeed happened. Every god was a threat to the empire. The Blue Charm goddess of the other races was actually not dead and was still alive. However, anyone who saw the report would know that the goddess was in a bad state. If he could kill her, it would be a great achievement. Calm down, calm down. Wei Sheng shouted to himself in his heart. A few seconds later, he calmed down and quickly thought about it, then ordered, "Mobilize all forces and immediately find out the whereabouts of the Justice Pirates. Everyone on level 1 alert. Prepare the war room. Recall all navies within 3,000 nautical miles of the port and order them to return to the port and be on standby 24 hours a day. I want to personally report to the Fleet Admiral. P.S. Today's update. Chapter 358. After reporting the situation to Fleet Admiral Yin Tan, Wei Sheng immediately rushed to the war room. Halfway there, the intelligence officer ran up to him with a happy face. "Sir, we found the location of the Justice Pirates." "Good job." Wei Sheng was slightly surprised and quickly took the military report. After a few glances, he suddenly showed a strange expression. The Justice Pirates are so bold. Even after such a thing happened, they still dare to contact the Empire's spies and enter the Empire's secret military port to resupply. But immediately, Wei Sheng's eyes flashed as he realized what was behind the military report. No, these guys are very cunning. They are playing with us. It takes time for information to be transmitted. What they're doing is still very risky. It seems that although they successfully retreated, they are in a very bad state and need to resupply urgently. With such a guess, Wei Sheng strode into the war room. A huge military map, exuding a saint-level aura, was pasted on the wall. This was a magic map. On the map, the emblem of a specific naval fleet was moving in real time. Wei Sheng reached out and touched the surface of the map. Do Qi flashed, and his spirit was infused into the map through the Do Qi. The map under his control began to change. The map immediately expanded, revealing a sea area. The markings on the sea area were much more detailed than before, and the center of the sea area was Knife Mountain Island. Wei Sheng immediately saw the markings of the two fleets on Knife Mountain Island. Lightning flashed in his mind, and his eyes flashed again. Oh, Tan Mo and Chopper Joe are both on Knife Mountain Island. What good luck! He immediately recalled. Chopper Joe's fleet needed emergency supplies, and Tan Mo went to Knife Mountain Island to investigate a corruption case. This was originally a small matter, mixed in with other heavy military affairs, but now it immediately became very clear. Looking at the map, Wei Sheng's mind flashed. According to the intelligence, the Justice Pirates are in a very bad state. Although they have the Blue Charm Goddess, the goddess has been in a coma. Even during the Battle of Pillars of Heaven, she did not wake up, but kept creating fake god incarnations to deal with the strong barbarians. The captain of the Justice Pirates, Dragon Suit, is actually the Blue Charm sex deity, but he has not grown up. His real cultivation is only silver level. Under Dragon Suit is the Orc Lion flag. This guy's cultivation was a little more powerful. He was at the peak of the silver level. He seems to have been seriously injured in the Battle of the Pillars of Heaven. Other than that, it's a flute. Silver-ranked wandering bards are good at, well, urinating songs. The last threat is Old Zhong. He usually disguises himself well, but he's actually a necromancer, but he's only at the Black Iron rank. There's also a silver-level necromancer, who is also part of the Justice Pirates. However, in the Battle of Pillars of Heaven, he did not hesitate to self-destruct in order to delay the attack of the barbarians. He is suspected to be a disciple of the Blue Charm sect and is very loyal. Among the conventional forces, the most threatening one is actually that gold-grade alchemy magic ship. It has the appearance of a fish, so it must be very good at underwater combat. In just a few seconds, Wei Sheng accurately evaluated the combat effectiveness of the Justice Pirates. Issue a special military order. Wei Sheng looked at the map, his eyes shining. After thinking about it, he decisively ordered, cut Joe Fleet, Beach Fleet, fight with all your strength, capture or kill all the members of the Justice Pirates. Yes, sir. The subordinate immediately replied loudly. Order again. Wei Sheng continued. Blunt Blade City Castellan, cooperate in the battle without delay. If we win this battle, we will be rewarded according to merit, and the merit will be calculated at 10 times the usual standard. Yes, sir. Wei Sheng shrank the magic map and quickly checked the other naval fleets in the sea around Knife Mountain Island. He ordered again, instructing these fleets to quickly move closer to Knife Mountain Island and to form an interception formation along the way to prevent the Justice Pirates from possibly escaping. Finally, he thought for a moment. No need to wait for the fleet, Admiral. Let's set off immediately and go straight to Knife Mountain Island. In the military port, countless people moved quickly. Wei Sheng boarded his double swords and led almost all the naval warships out of the port, leaving only a small number of naval forces behind. It could be said that all of them were mobilized. He stood at the bow of the ship, the sea breeze whistling, blowing his cloak. His eyebrows and spiky hair did not move at all in the wind. Gods can't be predicted. The Justice Pirates are not scary. The real horror is the Blue Charm God herself. No one knows if she can wake up, and how much combat power she has left. Let Chopper Joe, Desert Beach, and Blunt Blade City Castellan test it. Even if we have to sacrifice all of them, as long as we can find out the remaining combat power of the Blue Charm God, it will be worth it. Wei Sheng looked at the horizon, his eyes sharp and cold. The military intelligence was transmitted to Knife Mountain Island at the fastest speed. What? Special military order. You want me to mobilize all my forces to hunt down the Justice Pirates? Desert Beach Fleet and Blunt Blade City Castellan will work together? Chopper Joe was shocked when he received the military order. The chief mate's face was solemn. This is a direct order from the Marine headquarters. What did the Justice Pirates do to make 3 gold fighters and 2 naval fleets work together to deal with them? Oof. I've always felt that something was wrong with this pirate group. Chopper Joe gritted his teeth. Which pirate claims to be righteous? Throughout history, only the most vicious and insane criminals would think that they were righteous and that the whole world was wrong. Gather everyone. We'll go straight to their pirate ship. The chief mate immediately stopped him. Rear Admiral, isn't it inappropriate to attack blindly? The military order clearly requires us to join forces with the Desert Beach Fleet and Blunt Blade City Castellan to hunt down all the members of the Justice Pirates. Our strength is too strong. How can the Marine headquarters, which has always been shrewd and calculating, waste the precious combat power of the fleet so extravagantly? Obviously, this pirate group is hiding a huge combat power, which makes the Marine headquarters think that we must join forces to hunt them down. I suggest that we immediately contact the other 2 parties to discuss a joint action plan. Chopper Joe fell into deep thought. Although he was reckless, he was not stupid. The chief mate repeatedly disagreed with him. He hated the chief mate, but he also knew very well that the chief mate was a good soldier who fulfilled his duties and thought of the entire fleet in his own way. After thinking for a while, Chopper Joe shook his head. If the Justice Pirates are hiding their strength, the Marine headquarters military order must have made it clear. Since there is no detail, either the strength of the Justice Pirates is the same as on the surface, or they're hiding their combat power. The Marine headquarters did not get the exact information, but the Justice Pirates must have committed a big crime. It is likely that the things they looted are very important and must be taken back immediately. That's why they are so powerful and determined to deal with a small pirate group. It is necessary to contact the other 2 parties, but we also have to act in advance. Don't forget, their ships are docked in the port. Now is the best time to attack. If they escape to the sea, it will be more troublesome. Even if the Justice Pirates are hiding their strength, our attack can also probe a lot of important information and provide great help to our allies. Chopper Joe's words and demeanor showed his firm will. The chief mate sighed softly. He was very familiar with Chopper Joe's temperament and admired his selfless spiritual quality. Then please give the order. Just as Chopper Joe gathered his men and went straight to the ship of the Justice Pirates, the Desert Beach and Blunt Blade City Castellan also received this military order. Sir, this turned out to be a special military order. The chief mate was very nervous. We have to act immediately. We can't be paralyzed and delay, or we will be court-martialed. Desert Beach looked uncomfortable. He was picking left and right in the treasure house, testing the psychological bottom line of the Blunt Blade City Castellan, and such a thing happened. Looking at the military order in his hand, Desert Beach only felt that this thin paper was extremely hot. It's dangerous. This military order is too strange. Special level military order, and they even mobilized so many people, gathering 3 gold rankers to deal with an unknown pirate group. The water here is very deep. Rear Admiral Desert was not familiar with the Justice Pirates. Although the Justice Pirates destroyed the Gold and Silver Hook brothers, they only had a small reputation. In fact, later the Bishop of Life Church issued an order to suppress the spread of this record. The Marine Vice Admiral not only dug out Treasure Island, but also set up several pirate gangs to ambush them. He was the one who was in the limelight. Rear Admiral Desert was a person who liked to be sneaky, so it was normal that he didn't know the Justice Pirates. If the Justice Pirates had a gold-level combat power, he would pay attention to them. Special military orders can't be violated. We have to act immediately. Rear Admiral Desert winked at the chief mate. Even if our battleships were too eager to set sail and collided with each other in the port and almost ran aground, we have to go all out and rush to Sharp Blade Port to hunt down the Justice Pirates. The chief mate was stunned and understood the intention of his boss, but he still couldn't help but worry. Sir, this is a special military order, not usual. Execute the order. Desert Beach stared fiercely at the chief mate. The chief mate trembled and immediately took the order and retreated. On the side, the blunt blade city castellan who witnessed all the conversation was stunned and had a new understanding of the power of the high-level connections behind Rear Admiral Desert. The city castellan was forced to hand over the ship's spirit repair scroll and was extorted by Rear Admiral Desert. Of course, he was unwilling to accept the military order. He didn't directly belong to the Marine, but was recruited by the Empire. This kind of recruitment was only nominally relying on the Empire. The entire Blunt Blade City was actually an autonomous separatist force. Moreover, this military order was very strange. The city castellan couldn't figure it out and was unwilling to take the risk. The Blunt Blade City castellan stared at Rear Admiral Desert and suddenly said, "The Justice Pirates are extremely vicious. They actually set an ambush in the city. More than a dozen pirates ambushed me. Their methods were insidious and vicious. They secretly placed alchemy bombs all over the Blunt Blade City. In order to execute the military order and to protect the lives of the city's people, the city castellan did his best, fighting to the death and repelling the pirates. Although I was unfortunately injured, I still didn't stop and dismantled the alchemy bombs everywhere. But because of this, the attack time was delayed. I had no choice." Rear Admiral Desert listened to these words, and his eyes lit up. He clapped his hands and laughed. "Yes, the Justice Pirates are strong. They actually hit a gold-level powerhouse. I was investigating the ship's spirit scroll case with the Blunt Blade City Castellan, and when the incident happened, I joined forces with the Blunt Blade City Castellan. Although I wasn't injured, my equipment was seriously damaged, and my Do-Chi was almost exhausted, so I finally won." The Blunt Blade City Castellan heard Desert agree with him and smiled. When he heard that Desert's equipment was seriously damaged, his heart trembled. He knew that he had to bleed a lot to get through this. Rear Admiral Chopper Chiao held a long-handled broadsword in his hand, proud of his combat power. The first mate followed closely behind. Captain Fur Seal led the other elite Marines and tightly surrounded the Justice Pirates' ships. The person in charge of the military port rushed over. "Why are there fewer ships?" Rear Admiral Chopper Chiao frowned, feeling that something was wrong. The person in charge wiped the cold sweat on his head and immediately replied, "Early this morning, the Justice Pirates asked for a test run. I saw that they had repaired the magic ships to a certain extent, so I allowed them to do so." "So, they left all the ordinary ships in the port?" The first mate frowned. At this moment, on the ordinary ships, a large number of pirates gathered at the side of the ship. Holding all kinds of weapons, they were very nervous. These people were the captives who defeated the Quick Blade Pirates before. Facing the gold-rank powerhouses and the elite Marines, these pirates' fighting spirit was very low, their legs trembled, and they looked around for the higher-ups of the pirates. "All members of the Justice Pirates, listen. If you surrender now, I will spare your lives." Rear Admiral Chopper Chiao roared. The military port was closed, and the ships couldn't leave. Their own higher-ups were nowhere to be seen. These pirates realized that they were likely to be abandoned. They dropped the weapons in their hands and took the initiative to kneel on the deck. "We surrender. We surrender. Don't kill us." The Marines successfully boarded the ship and took control of the situation. "Search for me." Rear Admiral Chopper Chiao ordered again. The Marines entered the cabin in teams and searched around. "Found nothing. There is no one in the cabin. We don't have anyone here either." Bad news came one by one, and Rear Admiral Chopper Chiao's face became more and more ugly. "Wait, what is this?" Captain Fur Seal suddenly shouted. "Huh?" Rear Admiral Chopper Chiao's face flashed a trace of expectation. But the next moment, he heard Captain Fur Seal's sharp voice. "Bomb. It's an alchemy bomb, withdraw." Boom, boom, boom. The pirate ship violently exploded. The blast of the explosion raised smoke and waves. Countless hull fragments and marine corpses were thrown around. On the contrary, the pirates kneeling on the deck were less injured. Most of them fell into the sea. There were also unlucky ones who were killed by the explosion or were blown up high and fell to the ground. Damn it, this is a trap. The first mate gritted his teeth. Rear Admiral Chopper Chiao's face was pale. He was silent for a moment. Then he roared, "Chase!" Chapter 359. Deep-Sea Monsterfish. A group of experimental subjects huddled together and shivered. The cabin they were in was only illuminated by a few candles. The rest of the cabin was dark. A small wooden statue of Blue Charm Goddess stood in the middle of the candles. Ah! A hair-raising roar came from the darkness. It sounded like a beast, but more like a demon. It's here again. The experimental subjects were terrified. "Quick, pray to Blue Charm Goddess." A few of the experimental subjects shouted. The strange and mysterious hunters in the darkness had already killed a few of them. Each attack was unimaginably fast. Praying to the statue and asking for the goddess' protection is the only way to survive. This thought had been etched in their minds for a long time. The strong stimulation of approaching death and the fear in their hearts made them unable to think carefully. However, after trying, they gradually realized that this idea seemed to be correct. The hunter in the darkness roared and attacked again. A test subject on the periphery was dragged into the darkness just like that. In the darkness, the victim's shrill screams and the sound of the hunter tearing apart flesh and chewing on bones could be heard. "It's over, it's over. Sob, sob, sob. Another person has died. He was right beside me just now. God, the great Blue Charm Goddess, please protect me. I will serve you for life." The experimental subjects cried and started praying. This was the first time they prayed in unison since they woke up. "I have God power. I have God power again," someone shouted. "Quick, send it to the goddess statue." Everyone quickly made some space for him to squeeze into the center and touch the statue. As the prayers grew louder, more and more new believers obtained God power. In order to resist the spreading darkness, they immediately transferred God power to the statue. As more and more God power was transferred, the statue emitted a layer of light. The surrounding white candle flames burned more fiercely, bringing more light. The surrounding darkness immediately receded a little. The hunter in the darkness let out a dissatisfied and fearful cry. It's working again." After realizing this, the experimental subjects burst into tears. But this time, they were crying tears of joy, because they were finally certain that they had found the only way to survive in this hopeless situation. And in the cabin next door, Song Su had an indifferent expression as he manipulated the alchemy array, controlling the light and shadow effects of the candles, idols, and predators while observing the test subjects. The magic circle kept releasing the fear spell, and the threat of death from the non-existent hunters made it impossible for them to think carefully. In fact, even if they thought about it, they wouldn't be able to find any flaws. This was because the original memories of all the experimental subjects had been condensed into a single point by Song Su and buried deeply. Then, he used false memories to completely replace them. Under such circumstances, the experimental subjects could only pray to Blue Charm God with all their might to survive. The divine power produced by their bodies would be immediately transferred to the statue. At present, Song Su could not use external means to forcibly extract the divine power from the believers' bodies. The large shell wrapped around the statue was naturally a divine weapon, the fairy tale of the mermaid. Very good, very good. Song Su observed for a long time, and a faint hint of joy gradually appeared on his face. Previously, Song Su had only experimented with memory operations based on books and records. The ship ghoul's cultivation memories had given him a lot of practical experience out of thin air, as well as many insights that were not recorded. One of the most important techniques was the memory concealment spell. Song Su began to realize that faith could change the soul, and the control of memories could also shape the soul. He no longer forcefully deleted the original memories of the experimental subjects, but chose to use the memory concealment spell on them. Then, on this foundation, he planted false memories. This way, the degree of modification of the experimental subjects' souls would be greatly reduced, and their souls would become more stable. Although it was false memories, it was harder for the experimental subjects to find any flaws, and the efficiency of their prayers also increased slightly. The prayer period ended, and the experimental subjects' efficiency of obtaining divine power dropped to rock bottom. Sang-Soo immediately manipulated the array to release a strong hypnotic gas to knock out the experimental subjects. Not long after, Sang-Soo cleared the gas and opened the cabin door. A team of pirates immediately walked in. They pried open the mouths of the experimental subjects and poured 2 to 3 tubes of medicine into each of them. These medicine could replace food and help the experimental subjects maintain their healthy bodies, as well as their vigorous spirits. Before the pirates left, they would also bring a pile of fainted experimental subjects in the corner. These experimental subjects were all killed by the hunters, but in reality, they were only knocked out by electricity. These people can also be used to hide their memories and implant new false memories. They're limited captives, so I have to use them sparingly. Sang-Soo was careful with his calculations. In this batch of believers that I've cultivated, there are 7 normal believers, 13 pan-believers, and 2 devout believers. The efficiency of contributing divine power is much higher than if I were to do it alone. However, although their faith is strong, it won't last long. After all, their faith was stimulated by the outside world. When they wake up for the second round, their faith level will generally drop by a lot. Just as Sang-Soo was tallying the results, a magic device placed on the table suddenly rang with a rapid ringing sound. Sang-Soo was slightly stunned, and then his face darkened. The alchemy bomb secretly placed on the pirate ship at the port has exploded. It seems that we've been exposed. Sigh. 3 days of rest is actually not bad. Placing the alchemy bomb was the idea he came up with. This was an alarm. If the pirate ship safely left the port, the alchemy bomb would not explode. Once it exploded, it meant that the cabin where the bomb was placed was forcibly broken open. Time is of the essence. I have to quickly cultivate the next batch of believers. Sang-Soo buried himself in work again. On the surface of the sea, for pirate ships were sailing at the fastest speed. These were all magic ships, 3 bronze and 1 black iron. They were contributed by the Swift Blade Pirates and the Copper Gull Caravan. On the only black iron magic ship, the magic alarm rang. ZD's heart skipped a beat. It's not the best, but it's not the worst either. The real test is coming. The girl immediately informed the young Murloc, and then began to examine the magic scroll. She would not blindly perform alchemy. She actively adjusted her mental state and waited for the battle that could come at any time. The young Murloc had a thick rope tied around his waist. He sank into the shallow sea and was dragged by the black iron magic ship, passing through the sea. With the help of the artificial sea current, the young Murloc practiced the light life fighting technique. After receiving ZD's message, the young Murloc sighed in his heart. What will come will come. Bang! He stomped on the ground with both hands and feet and suddenly jumped out of the shallow water. Like a cannonball, he flew through the air and landed on the deck of the black iron magic ship. He shook his body, and countless water droplets scattered around. Under the sun and the whistling sea breeze, the water droplets were crystal clear, setting off the young Murloc's tall and strong body. His smooth muscles, his ferocious mouth full of sharp teeth, and his elegant shark tail. Captain, the crew was shocked, and their eyes were filled with reverence. Little ones, full speed ahead. All of you back to back. The enemy is probably the Navy, and their lineup is not weak. The young Murloc was now a captain, and he was already familiar with the task. Oh, the pirates responded in unison. After 3 days of rest, their morale was very good. The sea breeze gradually weakened. Under the blue sky and white clouds, the calm and vast sea stretched as far as the eye could see. The flag of the Justice Pirates hung high, and the 4 magic ships had already reached the limit of their speed. They were like four sharp knives, cutting two long white waves on the dark blue satin-like sea. "Enemy found!" the lookout suddenly shouted. The pirates were shocked, and the sailors controlling the sails moved faster. Flute and Cho were each in charge of a magic ship, and their faces were solemn. Bayou and a group of pirates were hiding in the dark cannons, waiting for the order to fire at any time. His immediate superior was Little Bird. At this moment, Little Bird was conserving her energy, holding the necklace with both hands. Sandow and Lon Zao, who were the captains of the assault, were checking their weapons. In the forecastle, the big guy swallowed mouthfuls of mud. "Eat too much, sure. I'll be hungry." This was his unique combat experience. Now, the big guy had the blood of the gods, mastered the royal land Do Chi technique, and had abundant training resources. His cultivation was already at the peak of the bronze level, only one step away from the black iron level. He was trained by the young Murloc and began to cultivate his combat ability in New Moon Town. After the exploration of the Magnetic Islands, the Battle of the Gold and Silver Brothers, and the Battle of the Pillar of Heaven, the big guy's combat experience was more rich and exciting than many veteran black iron fighters. The pursuing Navy fleet gradually appeared in the eyes of the Justice Pirates. The Navy flag that symbolized Rear Admiral Chow was flying high. "It's a Rear Admiral. Oh no, it's a gold rank. Wait, why are there so few warships? I remember when they were resting, they had more than 20 ships. Strange, their ships are tattered, as if they just went through a big battle." The morale of the pirates was shaken, and they adjusted themselves. On one hand, the appearance of the Navy fleet was miserable. One of the warships was even dragging thick smoke, and many of the flags were tattered, as if they had been burned by fire. On the other hand, the main force of the Justice Pirates was here. Some of them were survivors of the Lost Island, and had experienced life and death trials, and their minds were quite firm. Although most of them did not have the experience of the Lost Island, they had experienced the Battle of the Pillar of Heaven, and had seen the incarnations of gods and legendary figures. Although Chow Chow was a gold rank, he did not bring much deterrence to them. On the warship, the chief officer reported, "Sir, the mana pool of the 7th ship has exploded, and the cabin is on fire, and the ship's speed has dropped sharply. We must immediately stop sailing and rest." "Damn it!" Rear Admiral Chow gritted his teeth, and his face was very ugly. The explosion of the alchemy bomb not only killed many Navy elites, but also affected the Navy warships. In fact, Chow Chow's fleet was already in a bad state, and needed to be replenished and repaired immediately. In the case that they could not sail far, they could only enter the secret military port for maintenance. But the maintenance was ordered, and they were arranged behind the Justice Pirates. As soon as the Justice Pirates rested, they immediately fled. Chow Chow's fleet did not have time to rest and was hit by the alchemy bomb, making things worse. Therefore, at this time, only 7 warships were chasing the Justice Pirates. And before the battle, one of them was temporarily destroyed. The chief officer continued, "Sir, according to the latest information from the headquarters, the enemy has 4 warships on the sea and 1 underwater alchemy ship. Our warship lineup is only 1/5 of the usual. In terms of quality, the Slasher is only silver rank, and the Justice Pirates underwater alchemy ship is gold rank. We do not have the advantage." Rear Admiral Chow nodded. "Where are the beach fleet and the mayor of Blunt Blade City?" The chief officer's face was cold as he shook his head. They were attacked, and many alchemy bombs were planted in Blunt Blade City. There is no way to rush over in a short time. Damn it, it must be a trick of the Justice Pirates. Captain Furseal reported to me that there are elders of the Wisteria Chamber of Commerce in the Justice Pirates. They have participated in the black market auction in Blunt Blade City and already have forces in Blunt Blade City. It is easy to do this. Chow Chow could not help but hit the side of the ship with his fist. "Fight! We have to do our best to stall these people. As long as we stall them and our allies arrive, they will die without a burial place," Chow Chow quickly ordered. But as soon as his voice fell, he saw the 4 pirate ships of the Justice Pirates burst into flames, and thick white smoke rose. Then, The whining sound of cannonballs reached the ears of the Navy. "Open the shield," the chief officer decisively ordered. The next moment, one of the Navy warships took the initiative to retreat, and the 6 warships continued to chase while raising a huge light shield. These light shields had a unique shape, like an inverted wine glass. The mouth of the glass was facing down, completely covering the hull. The bottom of the glass was on top, as if it was a small hat. The cannonballs smashed into the light shield, causing dazzling explosions of various sizes, but the warships were not damaged at all. The magical defense component of the Imperial Navy's magic ship, the Luminous Cup. The young Murloc saw this situation and was already expecting it, and his expression was calm. The inventor of this equipment was not a human, but a werewolf alchemist grandmaster. Shivering was very lecherous and could be said to be reckless. He once tried to drug Qing Yu, the saintess of the beasts, but failed and was hunted down by the beasts. The werewolves could not protect Shivering and put him on the wanted list. Left with no choice, Shivering could only escape. He fled to the Sacred Empire and received the protection of Duke Hong Lu. He and the Duke were birds of a feather, and their friendship gradually deepened. In the following time, he gradually showed his talent, and finally received the title of a Grandmaster Alchemist. The Luminous Cup was one of Shivering's creations, and it was very famous. This kind of alchemy equipment was very adaptable, had very high defense, and consumed very little magic power. The main reason was that the warship's usual movements absorbed the light elements from the outside world. When the device was activated, the light elements would be released to participate in the defense, reducing energy consumption and increasing the defense value at the same time. Once the Luminous Cup was released, it was widely praised by the market. A few months later, the Empire forcibly accepted it, listed it as a military necessity, and restricted its market circulation. Now, the Luminous Cup components were commonly used in the Empire's navy, and Shivering had become an important figure in the Sacred Empire. Duke Hung Lee's Pearl family also benefited from this and made a lot of money. The Chopper Joe fleet has 6 ships that can fight and 1 silver-grade magic ship with G-grade Luminous Cup components, 4 black iron magic ships with H-grade Luminous Cup components, 1 bronze-grade magic ship with I-grade Luminous Cup components. The young Murloc observed the local warship. The Luminous Cup components were divided into 9 grades by Shivering, of which I-grade was the weakest, and it was paired with a bronze-grade magic ship. H-grade was a little higher, suitable for black iron magic ships. Then there was silver-grade G-grade, gold-grade F-grade, saint-level E-grade, and legendary-grade D-grade. The C-grade, B-grade, and A-grade above them were only in Shivering's imagination and had not been realized yet. Although the Justice Pirates took the initiative, the results of the first round of shelling were very low, and they were basically blocked by the Luminous Cup components. Then, the Navy began to counterattack. Dodge the shelling. The lookout shouted a warning. The sailors and combatants on the deck all dodged, taking cover, or simply lying down on the deck. The shells were fired, and some of them fell into the sea, creating snow-white waves. Some hit the deck, and some exploded, blowing the unlucky people into pieces. But there were more chain shells. These shells were specifically targeted at sails and masts. But the young Murloc, ZD, Song Su, Flute, and Cho acted in time, intercepting most of the chain shells. These shells had to be intercepted, otherwise the sails and masts would be damaged, and the Justice Pirate speed would be greatly reduced, and the possibility of escaping would plummet. All ships report damage. The young Murloc sent a message through the magic device. Soon, the situation of each ship was reported. The overall situation was acceptable. Although the Justice Pirates did not have a defensive device like the Luminous Cup, the hull was urgently installed with a layer of crystal glue. This was thanks to the 3 chubby blue ball repairmen and several basic repairman puppets. The young Murloc thought for a moment and ordered to activate the golden cannon. The captain of the shelling team, Little Bird, received the order and immediately acted, personally operating the cannon. For a time, the black iron-grade mana pool was constantly infused with mana, and the golden cannon gradually emitted a dazzling light. Detected the fluctuations of a gold-grade cannon. Initial location is the right side of the enemy's black iron magic ship. On the other side, Chop Chow quickly received the information. Chop Chow frowned slightly. The enemy ship's level is not high, so there is no need to dodge. Continue to pursue at full speed. Only when the gold-grade cannon was mounted on the gold-grade magic ship could its true combat power be fully unleashed. The mana supplied by the black iron magic ship was difficult to recharge in a short period of time to meet the firing standards of the cannon. Chop Chow's tactic was very clear. He chose to use the luminous cup to resist and catch up with the Justice Pirate's ship, engaging in a boarding battle. P.S. A 5,000-word chapter, a successful overhaul this month, and a successful supplemental update. Yay! You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.